put your mic on. That's right. That's right. Right. I think we'll go. Okay, members, thank you all for attending here in the Grange and via WebEx. Obviously, then, this is the October full council meeting. And as I said there, some members have joined us in the Grange in Oma, and other members have joined via WebEx. So you all have the agenda in front of you, have had for some days now. But the very first thing I want to do is to welcome Councillor Roy Crawford, who has replaced Councillor Howard Thornton in the Enniskillen DEA, Ulster Unionist Councillor for Enniskillen. So I'm sure you all join with me in saying you're very, very welcome, Roy. And Councillor Crawford, we look forward to working with you. Thank you. Okay. And so in relation to tonight and how we're going to proceed then, I just want you to note that maybe there had been too little notice in respect of item 8 and item 17. So we're going to reschedule item 8 and 17, which means they're withdrawn from tonight's agenda, but will reappear appropriately so that you've had further notice to consider. And then obviously, I want to go now for apologies variously. And the way we do this is we go to the group leaders. Tonight, Councillor Thomas O'Reilly is standing in for Tommy Maguire. So I'm going to go to Councillor O'Reilly for any apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. And I have two apologies, as you said, Tommy Maguire and Catherine Kelly.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. And then moving on to Victor on behalf of the Ulster Unionist Party. And I'll bring Victor in now because he's in the chamber. So take me a wee second, Victor, to get this.
No apologies from the Ulster Unionist Party, Chair.
Thank you. And go now then next to Paul Robinson on behalf of the Democratic Unionist Party. Paul, you're on.
No apologies on behalf of the Democratic Unionists, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And then I think Councillor Garrity is joining us on WebEx.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Barry. One late apology, just last minute, Councillor John Coyle, something cropped up, he can't make it, and just to echo what you said, welcome to Roy Crawford, new councillor on the chamber tonight on behalf of my own party. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we'll move to independents and others, and Councillor O'Coffey, Corlier O'Coffey might take that.
I know of no apologies, but I just wanted to raise an issue in regard to the item 8 and 17, which I hear you said is will be considered further. Can I ask whether that will be brought to a council meeting at which all members will be present, or just those with the who already sit on the planning committee? Thank you, Chair.
The November council meeting, it will reappear at the full November council meeting. But in relation to apologies, Councillor Stephen Donnelly has sent his apologies via Democratic Services, as I understand it. Thank you, Michelle. And that's that. If there aren't any other apologies, nobody indicating in the chamber or on WebEx, then we'll proceed to the next item on the agenda, which is to confirm and sign the minutes of the council meeting held on the 6th of September. And I want to emphasise that this is for accuracy only, and it will take 11 pages for it to go through for accuracy. Okay, so we'll start off page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, pages 5 and 6, page 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So I think I'll need someone to propose. I've got Councillor Warrington and Councillor Robinson proposing and seconding. Okay, others were indicating as well. Thank you. So then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to perhaps map out. We're going to deal with that first. Okay. Declarations of interest then. Again, I just look to the chamber and to WebEx. Councillor Baird.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to keep myself covered on page 7, item 6.6 of paper A. There's references to chairs of board of governors. I wish to declare a non-pecuniary interest as I chair post-primary school. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. And I don't think there are any other indications of, sorry, I'll go to Councillor Wilson.
Yes, Chair, 6.3, Chair, the Minister of Infrastructure, A5. I would declare an interest in the A5.
Okay, thank you. And Corleor O'Reilly, Thomas.
Hi, Chairman. Just as Councillor Baird, I'm a chair of a post-primary school, so St. Kevin's College. So just to put that on record.
Okay, thank you. And about to move on then, the declarations of interest are complete. Okay, so with that, I'm going to indicate now a reordering of business items. Sometimes we do that, you know, and to try to get the business done in the most efficient way possible. So I met earlier, myself and Alison. Alison, can you help me with just the way we're going to approach this? Okay, if you didn't mind.
No, certainly, Chair. So, Chair, I think your proposal was to move now to deal with items 5 to 7 inclusive. That would be the adoption of the confirmation, rather, of the minutes of the various committees, with the exception of the Planning Committee. After item 7, to move into part 2 confidential minutes, and that will deal with the, again, adoption and confirmation of the various minutes. And following conclusion of confidential business, Chair, you would then revert to item 10, which would be the notices of motion. And on completion of those, we would then move to correspondence. And the final matter then, time permitting, would be matters arising from last month's council meeting.
Okay, thank you for helping me with that, Alison. That is exactly what we agreed earlier. So just the best way to approach it, we think, from that point of view. So moving on then to item 5, and I'm very conscious that Councillor John McLaughlin is the Chair of Environmental Services. He may assist. So item 5, and again it's accuracy only, to confirm the minutes of the Environmental Services Committee meeting, which was held on the 7th of September, and that would be paper B in your agenda papers. So 13 pages, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, page 10. Councillor McLaughlin is indicating that he's happy so far, I think, but we'll just go to 13, 11, 12, and 13. And over to you, Councillor McLaughlin.
I'm happy to propose the adoption of the minutes.
Okay. And have a seconder for that to do, Councillor Wilson. Thank you. That's agreed, members. And then moving on to the committee, which is chaired by Councillor Buchanan, to confirm the minutes of Regeneration and Community Committee. That meeting was held on the 13th of September, paper C. Again, for accuracy only, 18 pages in total. So I'll go through those individually for accuracy. Page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, pages 7 and 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So, Councillor Buchanan, might you oblige? Yep, bring you in now, Mark.
Happy to propose, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And have a seconder. Okay, Councillor Rainey, happy to second. Thank you. That's agreed, members. And then item 7 on the agenda, Councillor Thompson chairs the Policy and Resources Committee and may assist in this matter. So we want to confirm the minutes of the P&R Policy and Resources Committee held on the 14th of September, 12 pages for accuracy. I'll go through them individually. Page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, move now to Corleor McGillet Ear. Emmett, Councillor McAleer.
Garlock, yeah, it's just in between, I suppose, page 4 and 5, item 4.5, and the proposal or the resolution that was noted as that. Just in relation to the detail noted, now I know it's not noted in this, but hopefully it was noted or it will be noted in the invite that we offer, that I made specific reference to the topic of Larne House being included in that. I know it says they're related issues that we'll be talking about with Miss McStravick, but just to explicitly have that included on the agenda for our proposed meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. That's noted for amendment and inclusion. Okay, inclusion, okay. That was page 5. Page 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, okay, 11 and 12. And I'm going to go to Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm happy to propose the adoption of the minutes with the inclusion made. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Robinson is quick to second. Thanks very much. And that's agreed, members. So just go back to my notes then. 5, 6, and 7. So we're moving to 12. Oh, we need, yeah. Okay. So at this juncture of the meeting, and we don't expect it to be long, we'll be going into confidential matters. So I need a proposer. Councillor Feely has indicated and Councillor Robinson has seconded. So we pause for a second. Is that right? Okay. Okay, so we'll take a moment then to come out of confidential. Give us the nod. Thanks, Adam. Okay, over to you then, Alison, to do a resume of what happened in confidential matters, please.
Thank you, Chair. While in committee, the Council confirmed and signed the confidential minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of September 2022, and there were no matters arising from those minutes. The Council also confirmed the confidential minutes of the Environmental Services Committee, the Regeneration and Community Committee, and the Policy and Resources Committee meetings.
Okay, thank you. And a proposer and seconder to adopt that. Okay. Alan Rennie is my proposer and Robert Irvin is my seconder. Thank you. Yep. Yep. So here we are, members. We are at item 10 on the agenda. And again, people just maybe approach this section of the meeting as temperately and as responsibly as possible. And even mindful of time from a time management point of view, be thinking like that as well, if you can. Obviously, no restriction on contribution. You know, you're entitled to your 3 minutes or your 5 minutes if you're a proposer, etc. That type of thing. But we'll try to get the business done. So, item number 10, and we'll go to 10.1, and it's a motion proposed by Councillor McCann and seconded by Councillor Campbell. So I'll go to yourself, Councillor McCann. I'll get your light on here.
Okay, thank you, Chair. If you're happy enough, I'll take the motion as being read there and just proceed, okay?
Okay, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So this motion is calling on the Irish Government to establish an All-Ireland Citizens' Assembly to debate and discuss our constitutional future. Constitutional change is now firmly fixed on the political horizon. It is no longer a question of if the reunification of Ireland will come about, but when. More importantly, how will the process of change be managed leading up to and following a unity referendum? If the fiasco of Brexit has shown us anything, it is how not to go about things. A transition to a national democracy in a new Ireland must be orderly, must be carefully planned and geared towards unlocking a society and economy which is forward-looking, inclusive and multicultural. The Irish Government has both a constitutional obligation and a duty as co-guarantor of the Good Friday Agreement to plan and prepare for Irish unity. The establishment of a well-resourced, representative, citizen-led Citizens' Assembly would represent one very important part of the planning needed before referendums on Irish unity are held. Recent initiatives within civic society, the volume of academic interest and sustained polling results all indicate increasing momentum in the unity campaign. Electoral results across Ireland have shown that the appetite for change and a new Ireland has never been stronger. That reality, Chair, cannot be ignored. The Taoiseach and government ministers need to be persuaders for a new Ireland, based on the will of the people, and to lead orderly preparations for unity referendums both north and south. We welcome the decision by the Irish Government earlier this year to establish 2 citizens' assemblies to examine biodiversity laws and the direct election of a Dublin mayor. These follow on from earlier successful examples of participatory democracy, such as the Constitutional Convention in 2012 and the Citizens' Assemblies of 2016 to 18 and 2019. The future of the health service, education, the judiciary, government arrangements, taxation, pensions and public services, and many other practical issues within the new Ireland are among many important issues that a Citizens' Assembly should discuss. Our people need to know what a new arrangement will look like. We need to start asking the questions and seeking the answers. An All-Ireland Citizens' Assembly with Irish Government support and resource will enable political, civic and cultural entities to become involved in a structured and formal process of change. It puts citizens at the heart of shaping in the new Ireland in a democratically led process. It must be open and inclusive with participants from all across Ireland and the diaspora. This was facilitated in the 2012 Constitutional Convention. Unionism is part of our shared history. So too is Orangeism. It must also be part of our future. The new Ireland provides an opportunity to join Orange and Green together in a new dispensation based on equality. A number of factors, including the Brexit debacle, the outworking of the protocol, the behaviour of the British government and the huge societal changes that have taken place in the South have moved some unionists, especially those who are not politically committed to the main unionist parties, to consider how the future might be shaped. Space must be created to encourage unionist participation and contribution to this conversation. Everyone is entitled to be part of the planning process and the future and to have ownership of it. The Citizens' Assembly must extend a sincere invitation to all who call this island home to make their contribution in this discussion and to express their opinions and hopes for the future. Civic society is already energised and is mobilised on this issue, and groups like Ireland's Future, Think 32, Constitutional Conversations have all called on the Irish Government to plan for the future. I was one of thousands, Chair, of people last Saturday who attended a conference organised by Ireland's Future in Dublin, and you could not help but be enthused by the positive energy of the people and the interesting panel debates. I particularly enjoyed the contributions from those who are from a non-nationalist background and how they are looking forward to playing their part in the creation of a new Ireland. Thousands of Gaels across Ireland, under the umbrella of Gaels na Céile, have written to the Taoiseach calling for a Citizens' Assembly. There is a plethora of academic studies published and currently underway on various aspects of North-South integration and constitutional change. Every third level institution in Ireland is looking at and conducting research on this topic. By convening a Citizens' Assembly in Irish unity, the Dublin government will demonstrate its commitment to engaging with citizens to chart the best future for the people of Ireland. This will not be just for a better future for those who support unity, it'll be a better future for all, irrespective of political persuasion, religion, identity or background. The new Ireland, which comes in the wake of the successful referendum on Irish unity,
Councillor, please.
okay, Chair, 2 seconds, I'll have us there, must have respect, inclusivity and citizens' rights at its core. The expression of all the cultures making up our nation will be supported and a generous, open society will flourish. Partition has failed all our people. Political leaders should be engaged in visionary thinking and developing positive opportunities rather than seeking to limit and reduce citizens' aspirations.
I have to call it. All
Okay, just one last
for
sentence.
5 minutes now, Stephen.
Okay, the first step in this process, Chair, is to let the voices of our citizens be heard in an All-Ireland Citizens' Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I'll take a seconder for that motion, and I may be going to Councillor Withers, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to second the Councillor McCann's motion. I'll just speak on it now. We're living through a time of huge change on this island and across these islands, and change presents challenges and change creates opportunities. There are turbulent times we find ourselves in economically, demand that we do everything in our power to support people this time, and indeed as elected representatives, it's our duty to do so at all times. Some may claim that the current cost of living crisis means that now is not the time to focus on Irish unity. However, if anything, this has shown that now is the time to do just that and to consider the merits of reunification. We simply cannot afford the status quo. It has become abundantly clear over many years that the British government will always put the needs of the people living in Britain first. They care very little for the plight of people living here. In fact, it is fair to say that the British government care little for the majority of people living in England. Their recent mini budget, parts of which they were forced to abandon in recent days, is more evidence of the Tories' plan to make the rich richer and the poor poorer. They have been forced into an embarrassing U-turn just in the last few days, but they will go again another day. They will always have found a way to prop up the super rich at the expense of the working people. The people deserve better, and the people deserve to have those who are representing them making decisions for them, and that means those elected on the island of Ireland. The people here now have an opportunity for real change. The proposed Citizens' Assembly provides an opportunity for everyone to have their say, to raise concerns, to identify opportunities, and to be part of something that will be truly life-changing for the people living here, to take part in a conversation about building a nation that will truly cherish all of our citizens equally. Now, we recognise not everyone feels the support of Irish unity as we do in Sinn Féin, and that's okay. I can understand there are different views within this chamber and across society, but that conversation in Irish unity has already started, and we need to create more opportunities for that important discussion to continue. We don't own the conversation, and nor do we want to, but we are part of the conversation with others, and I would urge those in the chamber to support this motion, to join the debate, and support the creation of a space for people from all walks of life to do the same, and therefore I support Councillor McCann's proposal. Thank you, Chair. Cormac.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I'm going to go now to Corlior O'Coffey. The discussion is opening up now with Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I would be generally supportive of democratic processes, participative processes that empower people to discuss all range of matters, obviously including constitutional matters, including the constitutional situation here in Northern Ireland, on these islands generally. However, I would also seek and I would demand really the central involvement of working class people and the collective organizations of the working class in that process. And as such, for me, this motion raises significant concerns. I note that Sinn Féin, who has brought this motion forward, are really asking the Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael government to bring forward a citizens' assembly to consider constitutional change. I have no confidence in this government to do any such thing. There is also no clarity in this motion on the process. How will these representatives of the people be chosen? On what basis and with what democratic mandate? Will this involve representatives of the working class? Will this citizens' assembly be will representatives of the working class be brought in? And will they be represented on a class basis through their collective organizations? What representation will there be from working class people, north and south? And will working class Protestants be represented, and how will that be the case? And what will we do if this citizens' assembly decides against a united Ireland? What is that? How does that go against a democratic? You know, how can that be a democratic decision? And what will we do if this on the opposite, if this citizens' assembly decides for a united Ireland? How will that be that choice of this undemocratic selected group be imposed on unionists in the north and others? I think that this is fundamentally undemocratic, this methodology. And indeed, I would highlight the concerns I have by the statement that it must include the Irish diaspora, who includes the likes of President Biden. You know, are we saying that the external right-wing elements can have an input in this process? I have no confidence in a process being led by Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. This citizens' assembly is the opposite, in my opinion, of a participative democracy or a participative democratic approach. It involves the selection of individuals atomized outside of the collective representative structures of the trade union movement and the working class generally. What is more, I wouldn't have confidence with the current Dublin government to manage this process at all. If we listen to Sinn Féin representatives in this council and elsewhere, we wouldn't trust this government to spend €5. But according to this motion, we're now going to entrust upon them the power and the responsibility to establish a citizens' assembly to decide the constitutional status of this island. So I'll be voting against. Thank you, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Donal. Move now to Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chair. You know, I think I'd like to state at the outset, you know, the pro-union people believe in what they're about. We believe in the union of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Over the weekend, we saw what a shared island looked like. Even the mere mention of Northern Ireland produced boos and heckling from the crowd at the conference in Dublin. This motion does not even pretend to want a conversation. It is just another arrogant assumption that wishes away everyone in Northern Ireland that is comfortable living here and living their lives in this part of the United Kingdom. We're in the middle of a serious cost of living crisis, where support from Westminster is absolutely key to helping people cope. Yet Sinn Féin MPs won't turn up to work there and debate specifics, develop positions, and inform policy. Therefore, Chair, the Democratic Unionist Party will not be supporting this motion and will be voting against it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Moving now to on WebEx, Councillor Gannon, followed by Councillor Bell in the chamber. So, Councillor Gannon.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the proposer and seconder for the motion. Some of the comments before me are disappointing. I think Councillor Thompson may need to speak to his own party about not turning up to work as well, potentially there. But nevertheless, I think as well, Councillor Recoffey misses the point of a citizens' assembly, and that it's a random selection with representative criteria including gender, age, location, and social class. But I think, and the SDLP believes, citizens' assemblies are a great initiative and something I'd very much like to see in the North on a wide range of issues here. From experience that we've seen in the past, they're overwhelmingly positive and take away some of the political sting from difficult issues and are a brilliant way to help our society progress. The discussion on this island's future is very much alive, as the motion states. Events such as Brexit have brought it to the fore, along with a terrible Tory government. The Ireland's Future event proves just how engaged people are. 5,000 from across the island attending speaks volumes. James Nesbitt said at the event that the future of this island should be led by the people, not politicians. And I can't help but agree with that. This is bigger than political parties and individuals. A citizens' assembly would help have people at the lead of this discussion. And the SDLP have already called for an All-Ireland Citizens' Assembly to discuss a new Ireland some time ago. And I'm glad this motion is joining these calls and the many other calls from others for this Citizens' Assembly. The SDLP believe in this concept so firmly, we established the New Ireland Commission, which has already brought together people from a diverse background to work on the issues raised in the motion and to work towards an agreed New Ireland that works for everyone. We've been having quiet conversations within the community with those who may not engage publicly, and that's a whole range of people from Republican to Loyalist and everything in between. Even on a local level, those private conversations have give confidence to engage. And here in Fermanagh and Omagh, we are doing this to lay the groundwork and sow the seeds for future discussion, such as at a Citizens' Assembly and wider with the New Ireland Commission. These are the real-life practical actions, and they are obviously of much importance to the future of this place. There is still real work to be done to make a new Ireland that works for everyone a reality. And these actions and initiatives are what will deliver a new North and a new Ireland. And that is ultimately the vision of the SDLP. So we are more than happy to support this motion, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on now till Councillor Bell. And Councillor Bell in here in the chamber.
Unsurprisingly, I am speaking against this motion. But first, let me say what the Republic of Ireland does should be left up to the Republic of Ireland. This motion claims that we, quote, must plan for constitutional change. However, I asked the proposers why they think this is the case. The last election may have seen Sinn Féin elected as the largest party, but to use this as an argument that there's a desire for a united Ireland is false. Unionism still outpolled Irish nationalism, and more unionist MLAs were returned. There is no evidence amongst pollsters that there is a majority vote for a united Ireland. The Ireland Future event has been hailed in this chamber as a success and historic moment. However, I take a different view. The event only managed to attract 5,000 attendees within a venue that holds 13,000. Less than half the seats were filled. I note that the Ireland's Future's next venue will be the Ulster Hall, a significantly smaller venue. Perhaps the organisers have realised the lack of appetite for their ambitions. Furthermore, on Twitter, the event never surpassed 200 live stream viewers. To put this into perspective, that same Saturday, the Irish Rugby Football Association had a Twitter live stream discussing the current Irish Rugby Emerge Tour, and it had a larger viewership. More people are interested in up-and-coming Irish rugby players than they are in discussing the constitutional position of Northern Ireland. I, as a unionist, would also have grave concern for any unionist who would attend such a citizen assembly that is proposed. At the Ireland's Future event, it has widely been reported that Leo Varadkar was booed and mocked while on stage, and if that's how Irish nationalism treats fellow Irish nationalists, I can't even imagine how they would treat a unionist voice in that room. I entered politics to make Omagh a better place. I intend to use my time and energy to do just that. Therefore, I and the Ulster Unionist Party will be voting against this motion. Simply put, we have better things to do. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Corlior O'Keenan. Councillor Keenan.
Yes, well, I fully agree that there needs to be real participation from all of the people of Ireland And I do note that Councillor McCann spoke about participatory democracy. And this is something that I feel very strongly about. But from what I've seen of the event last weekend, it was political parties, big businesses, and celebrities. I think we can't allow a political circus created by the powerful and wealthy be the vehicle to decide on the future of our country. It must have a grassroots, working class connection with real participation from the bulk of the population, which is the working class. It cannot be, the majority cannot be sidelined in the interest of the minority. That I think would be an attack on democracy. So I suppose what I'd like to see is smaller citizens' assemblies, maybe this is the plan, all over the country, which would be open to everyone and controlled by the ordinary people in the area. And a question, I suppose, on it, are these citizens' assemblies, are they going to be transformative, or are they going to be reformism? You know, we don't want to create, what I believe anyway, for real change is not to create a joining of two failed states. It must be something new and transformative. And what all Republicans struggled for over the years was a 32-county social republic, a workers' republic. And this would be the argument of myself and many, and I hope that we'll be included in the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Move now to Councillor Wilson.
Chair, yes, as a unionist councillor and an Ulster Protestant who has lost a lot of good friends during the 50 years terrorist campaign by Republican terrorists, I do not welcome any interference by a foreign state, which is, we have existed as neighbours for around 100 years, and that's as it should be. The will of the unionist people was not broken, and now we're being lambasted by false propaganda. We have listened over the years about the poor treatment of the Roman Catholic minority in Northern Ireland, yet the rise in that population belies that as false propaganda. When we look at the treatment of our fellow Protestants down south, where their numbers fell from the high teens to less than, at this minute in time, less than 2%, who in their right mind would even want to be part of this anti-Protestant and anti-British state? In 1922, the same IRA burned an orphanage of Protestant children in County Galway and the children inside it. We have seen our fellow Protestants and indeed Roman Catholics who did not agree with them being murdered as they went about their daily work. Leo Varadkar and the Green Party spokesman were booed off the stage for expressing their views. So much for a shared future. What about the 900,000 people that have left Southern Ireland and went across to England where they say they have a better way of life? How much does Westminster pay to finance the huge deficit in our finances? They also loaned the Irish Republic about 3 million sterling to keep them afloat. Our Assembly has a Sinn Féin Speaker, a Sinn Féin either First Minister or Second Minister, whatever. There are 3 Sinn Féin ministers, heads of important departments in the Assembly, 1 junior minister. What representatives does the Protestant elected have down south? I would ask, when His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh and Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II died, did we fly the Union flag? No. Yet the councils in Northern Ireland can name publicly funded facilities after Republican terrorists. Is this a shared future for equality? I don't believe it is. It's something that I will be voting against and I will be taking no part in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And next up, I go to Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite sad to listen to some of the responses there. Councillor Wilson talking about
truth,
the South. He forgets that his own beloved United Kingdom bans anyone from the Catholic religion to be the head of state. That's a fact. A Muslim, a Hindu, anyone else can be head of state, but a Catholic is banned. That's a fact. As for Councillor Bale and the propaganda about the stand, about 13,000 venue, that's completely wrong. 13,000 venue is for a concert where the standing room. You know, you can make all this nonsense up, the propaganda up, you know, and bury your head in the sand like an ostrich if you want. But the fact is, it was a roaring success. People want change. Change is coming, and surely it's better to be involved in the change in the civic forum and putting your own points of view across, because a change is certainly coming. Everything is pointing toward it. But if people don't want to see that, that's all right. And the one last thing I'd say, surely when people looks over at Britain at the minute, with Liz Truss, Boris Johnson before, and a raft of prime ministers that don't give a toss about the north of Ireland. Surely unionist people here, and I do believe a lot of them actually do see this, that we are better on this island being able to govern ourselves than having a crowd of toffs from Eton University actually fathering their own nests and fathering their friends, the rich people. You know, and I'll say no more, but I'll be supporting this motion.
Councillor Coyle.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just quickly, some of the remarks are a little bit surprising and a bit shocking, really. I was there on Saturday. It was not anti-Protestant or anti-unionist. We had some fantastic speakers from a Protestant and Unionist background. And just to get the facts right, the member from the Green Party and Leo Varadkar were not booed off the stage. That is not true. I'm a woman, I'm working class, I'm a healthcare assistant, and I'm a trade unionist. And there were plenty of other people attending the same as me. There were lots of trade unionists there for the benefit of anybody worried about the trade union not attending. There were people from the Labour Party in the South, SIP2, Forza, and other trade unions. And the best thing was that there was plenty of young people from different backgrounds, not just Sinn Féin or maybe even that politically minded or involved at this moment in time. They were great to see, and they were there because they want a difference. They want to self-determine their own future and the future of their families, and that's what this is about.
Thank you, Councillor Coyle. Move on to Corlier McCaffrey and Ish. Chris, please.
Gurmagad Caherly. Just from the outset, I do want to say that it's unfortunate that any time we have this type of debate, that history is dragged up. My generation, I'm 27 years old, I was born in 1995. Our generation are focused on the future. We want to see the future of which way this island is going to go. How is it going to serve the benefits? How is it going to serve our interests in the future? We can no longer persist in ignorance and self-deception and continuing to pretend that a new Ireland is not going to happen. Is unworkable. And unionists have long been part of a broad discussion on this. We want to see a peaceful and democratic end to the union with Britain as Republicans. Aside from that, the people from a unionist background or people from a British culture have every right to make their case, but make their case for the future. I'm saying now, as a young Republican, that I do not believe the United Kingdom has anything to offer me or anyone who will come after me. To talk about being represented at Westminster, the DUP at this moment in time, cannot actually get any of the things that they promised to their electorate. They cannot get any of the things they've set out, and will ultimately be thrown under the bus yet again by the British government. It was their own MP Nigel Dodds who famously said that this Parliament only takes an interest in the north of Ireland when it suits them for political purposes. We talk about representation. The population of the north of Ireland makes up around 2.6%, 2.7% of the population of the United Kingdom. We have that share in Westminster in terms of proportional representation. in the new Ireland, and even using the current Dáil Éireann system of 158 seats, we would have almost 4 times the increase of representation at that Parliament. So that alone would ensure that more resources and more things could be gained for the 6 counties here in the north. A new Ireland gives us a chance to fight for the things that we want: equal rights to housing, universal healthcare, education, employment, and the right to a clean and safe environment, an inclusive republic with guaranteed religious and civil liberties, where no one is denied their rights as human beings. And it was very unfortunate to hear some of the other councillors crudely remark that Catholics were not treated differently than Protestants on this island, as one of the last penal laws was only repealed in 2020, which banned the Irish language from being used in the courts. So I don't think that statement is at all sensible, and if he only knew how ridiculous it was, he would probably retract it. The fact is,
Chris, 10 remaining seconds. Thank you.
Well, I'll just finish off on this. Proven time and time again, the British government does not represent the interests of anyone here. British Prime Minister does not have a mandate to speak on our behalf, and I believe that planning for a new Ireland is absolutely essential, and I'll be supporting the motion. Gurmagad.
Okay, Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. And at the outset, Chair, I would like to thank you for bringing forward this agenda item so that these important motions, of which there are a number this evening, can be given the proper time. These are issues that people feel strongly about, and I think they do merit being higher up on the agenda. I want to thank Councillor McCann, Councillor Withers for bringing forward this motion, which I want to support. Chair, I believe that it's good to talk, and I'm a strong believer in civic fora and citizens' assemblies. The voice of real people addressing real issues in their life. And I think the current cost of living crisis has brought into sharp focus the needs of citizens and their concerns about how their needs are going to be met going forward, and particularly how we can address the upcoming winter months. Chair, the constitutional question will always be high on the agenda in this country. And I do believe in participatory democracy. We now live in the post-Brexit era, and that has caused many people in Northern Ireland great consternation. And certainly I, for one, deeply regret the decision of the United Kingdom to exit the European Union. And we see how Prime Minister Truss is planning to repeal some very valuable EU legislation, which I think is definitely not helpful. But there will always be a special relationship between Ireland and Great Britain. And there have been historic differences and a lot of atrocities carried out on both sides. But the way forward is peace, reconciliation, and understanding between nationalists and unionists. And what better forum than an All-Ireland Citizens Assembly for addressing these issues, for debating these issues, for looking at the pros and cons with an emphasis on human rights, respect, and mutual tolerance. I disagree with Councillor Wilson. I think that Catholics were discriminated against in Northern Ireland. It was not false propaganda. But I think in the new agreed Ireland, discrimination against any section of our community should be relegated to history books. So for these reasons, Chair, I'm happy to support the motion.
Okay, thank you. And then our final indicating speaker, Councillor Swift. And then it will be, I just had an indication from Councillor McAleer as well. So Councillor Swift, you're next.
Gurmagad Cahirlock, and yes, I welcome any discussion on Irish unity, and I thank Stephen and Patrick for bringing this forward. And as Josephine says, it's good to have these debates brought further up the agenda while we have very, very pressing issues and cost of living crisis to discuss. This is a very important issue and topical currently. And I would say from the outset, this discussion is everyone's responsibility to participate and shape and change our future. And I especially want to see included our Irish diaspora who have been forced to emigrate due to much oppression and inequality and blatant discrimination, all of which we want to see an end to. Without a doubt, there's a growing debate across the island about Irish unity, and I'm delighted to see that people are beginning to have the sensible, real and practical discussions about that. I, as an Irish Republican, want to see the establishment of what was declared in 1916 a sovereign, independent 32-county Irish Republic without any interference whatsoever. So I applaud all and any discussions to do that, and I am supportive of all of those discussions. Gurmagat.
Okay, Gurmagat, Bernice. And finally, Councillor McAleer, Corlear McAleer.
Cormagat, Carlock, yeah, it's certainly a topical and an interesting subject to be raising. I note that in this instance, Councillor Wilson or Councillor Withers was speaking on it when the seconder was Councillor Campbell, but I'm sure that's something that's permitted. I know in the last meeting I tried to raise an issue that I had seconded. I wasn't permitted to do so because the proposer of that motion wasn't there. But in terms of the debate at hand, I suppose.
Maybe just intervene at this stage, Emmett, because I would hate to be accused of inequality in terms of how we're managing the meetings. I'll go to the Chief Executive to explain the disparity that you reference.
Yes, Chair. The reference that Councillor McAleer is making is when the proposer had left the meeting, had made no alternate arrangements for the proposal to be brought forward. The case before us, excuse me, this evening is the proposer is in attendance and the seconder was unavailable and had advised you in advance of alternate arrangements for the seconding of the motion. So totally different.
Well, we'll tidy that wee bit up, but carry on, please, Emmett.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah.
Yep.
I suppose, firstly, I suppose a lot of this discussion is centred around the event at the weekend, and I know that's not directly what this motion is about. So I suppose it's better to move away from that. But I suppose before we do so, I think it was disappointing that a number of academics and a number of journalists that I'd spoken to who were in attendance had raised the fact that there was a distinct lack of discussion at the event at the weekend in terms of climate and biodiversity and nature, that didn't really seem to focus at all. So I would imagine at the Citizens' Assembly, and as previous speakers have spoken about, the involvement particularly of the younger generation, that would be something that would be rectified and would be hammered home as a really a unifying element right across this island. And we've read this week and in recent days of the threat again to environmental rights, to human rights and to workers' rights that has been directly caused as a result of the move towards Brexit, triggered by the Tory government in Westminster and ably propped up by the DUP. That's something that's a very real threat to this area. So that's something that we do need to be particularly mindful of. I'm disappointed again in way this debate is kind of diverged off into a debate against religion and drawing up old wounds. I think that we do have to keep one eye on the past, but if you spend all your time looking backwards, you're not going to move anywhere. I think that the other aspect or the other element that seems to have been really expressed by a number of speakers is that whilst there doesn't seem to be too many objections to the failures of the Tory government and the continued oppression that they're putting people right across these islands under, there seems to be some sort of a rosy gaze or rosy tint at the government in Dublin. And that nothing could be further from the truth. We have propping up there a Green Party led by a man who is anything but green and is doing his utmost to actually
Okay, Emmett,
destroy
can you
the
make your
environment
concluding
across it.
point within the time
And
allotment, please?
just finally, I would remind many people will be aware of the quote, but if you remove the English army tomorrow and hoist the green flag over Dublin Castle, unless you set about the organisation of the Socialist Republic, your efforts will be in vain. England will still rule you. She will rule you through her capitalists, through her landlords, through her financiers, through a whole array of commercial and individualist institutions that she has planted in this country. So I think we do need to move away to a different style of government, and that Citizens' Assembly could be a way to promoting that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and this may be the final speaker now, Councillor Irvine.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll be very quick. I wasn't going to say anything, but I think some of the comments that have been said by some of the speakers, I'm nearly standing up in amazement at. It should be no surprise, I think, for everybody around here that those that come from a unionist stroke and Republican stroke nationalist position have their main stances and they know where they want to go. The issue has been debated, it's been playing, and I think that has been very much said. What I am wondering at is some of the dialogue that some of the speakers have come about of saying, particularly, I think Councillor McCaffrey said that his generation wants to look forward, wants to look to a new Ireland and really move forward. And yet the narrative that we as unionists, and I in particular, keep constantly hearing is that nationalists and particularly Republicans look back over what has been done to them over centuries, and they want a sort of retribution, they want recompense, they want apologies. That is not the narrative that I'm actually hearing this evening about trying to move forward and don't look back, look forward. That's the way that we would like to move forward, and that's, I think, what the unionist tradition try and do. We accept what has happened in the past, we try and deal with it, and we try and look forward. We appreciate what's in the past, but we don't keep both our feet in the past. And unfortunately, my experience with a lot of Republicans is their feet are in the past. Their narrative might be talking about moving forward and not looking back, but their actions don't actually portray what they say. So I don't know where we're going. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Now, I'm going to invite Councillor McCann to sum up appropriately. And I do detect dissension within the, so I think we'll be going to a vote.
Okay, Chair, thank you. Well, it's been an interesting debate, and that's what this motion primarily is all about. It's about debate and discussion and hearing different persuasions and different points of view. And I think the debate that we've had here tonight is not dissimilar or unlike any debate that's having across Ireland and across the north and in kitchen tables all over the place. And it's happening in nationalist households and organisations. It's happening in unionist households. I know that. And it's good that this local government authority is also having the debate as well. Someone asked in their comments, why did we bring this motion forward? Well, it's clear. Partition has failed our people, all our people. Political leaders, and we're all political leaders in this chamber, should be engaged in visionary thinking and developing positive opportunities rather than seeking to limit and reduce citizens' aspirations. Brexit, the failures and reckless approach of the Tory government in London, has become a huge catalyst for change in recent years, and it's undeniable that a widespread popular discourse on a new constitutional future for Ireland has begun. That can't be denied. The Irish government should be focused on catching up with that popular momentum. It needs to embrace a new approach. It should start the process of planning the transition to Irish unity and use its formidable resources, nationally and internationally, to place the constitutional future of our country at the centre of its diplomatic mission. And as I said earlier, Chair, the first step in this process is to let the voices of all our citizens be heard in an All-Ireland Citizens' Assembly. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't think anybody will disagree with me that we're in voting territory here. So we'll set up a vote. Okay. Obviously, people vote in the chamber and people vote online. So, sign in between that. Does the light come on?
Flashing light first.
Oh, I have done that.
Yeah.
Edit. Very good, thank you. Okay, over to you. Let me introduce.
Okay, Chair, so there were 17 votes for, 14 votes against and 1 abstention, so the motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. The motion is carried.
Chair,
Okay, moving on
Chair.
to item 2. Is it
Chair.
a point, sir? Is it need to be a point of order? You can't interrupt unless it's a point of order. So I have to
Yeah.
move to item 2 on the agenda. Well, or sorry, not item 2, but the second of 6 motions. And I'll do that now. The second such motion is Fermanagh and Omagh Remote Business Strategy, proposed by Councillor Bell and seconded by Councillor McLaughlin. So I'm going to hand over to you straight away, Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. As noted by the motion, the COVID-19 pandemic has ushered in a new era of how people work. Working from home or through a hybrid model is quickly becoming the norm for many workplaces, such as within the technology and finance sectors. This change in how we work creates opportunities for council districts, where these sectors are traditionally not as strong, as workers no longer have to reside in urban council districts where these sectors are more common. Thus, the Fermanagh and Omagh area must embrace these changing work habits as a means of promoting economic development locally, and our council should aim to support both workers and businesses who have already begun embracing these opportunities. The first step to supporting our local workers and businesses in this changing work environment is to create a remote business strategy. The creation of this strategy, like all our council strategies, will be moulded through a cross-party group with assistance from our council staff, and I hope relevant organisations who have an invested interest in this issue, such as Omagh and Enniskillen Enterprise. As like with any aspect of government, cooperation will ensure the strategy is as effective and wide-reaching as possible. For me, this strategy, once developed, should be based around 3 key themes. Firstly, as noted in the motion, County Donegal Council already has a similar strategy, named Remote Strategy for Business. It aims to promote County Donegal as an idyllic place to live if you can work from home. I see no reason why Fermanagh and Omagh District Council cannot market ourselves in a similar manner. We consistently score high in standard of living, safety, and people consistently report that they are happy living here. With these factors, we should be able to attract remote workers to live happily in our district, and with these high-skilled workers, our local businesses will benefit from local spending. However, I think our strategy can be more ambitious than our neighbours. This strategy should also aim to support workers already living in our district. Already, this council consistently lobbies for high-speed internet access to be introduced into every corner of our district, and I know this work will continue to ensure every worker can work from home if it is required. This strategy could also mark the beginning of exploring the possibility of introducing digi-hubs to our rural areas. This model for promoting rural economic growth has already been adopted by parts of the European Union, as well as more locally here in the United Kingdom and across the border in the Republic of Ireland. To give an example of one centre, and Chair, please excuse my French, the Cocotte Numérique Centre in the Auvergne region of France is such a digi-hub. It provides space for remote workers and assists new arrivals who aim to work remotely settle within this rural area of France. Lastly, this strategy should aim to market Fermanagh and Omagh to businesses recruiting when seeking workers with the ability to work from home. Fermanagh and Omagh have some of the most fantastic schools in the country, and our Southwest College also produces people with the skills many businesses require. Therefore, we should be encouraging businesses and universities with remote working and learning options to recruit from our district. This will allow us to tackle the ever-prevalent issue of brain drain in our rural area and continue to promote economic development in Fermanagh and Omagh District Council. Overall, this strategy seeks to support an already happening trend in business, and I feel it's the role of the Council to support both workers and businesses through this change in working habits. Working from home opens the door for many employment opportunities and higher wages for people living in our district, and through economic development, we can improve the standard of living for many in the area. I hope this motion will seek cross-party support so we can get to work as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. I'll be going now till Councillor McLaughlin, the seconder, but just to indicate, I will want to bring in Councillor Green after that because it is a point of order essentially that he wants to make about the voting system not working for him in the last vote. But please, Councillor McLaughlin, you're a seconder.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to take up much of your time. Councillor Bell has adequately covered this topic in his proposal of the motion. I'm just going to give examples. We have, in my local area, we've had a number of families who have moved over from the UK to the Northern Ireland, and they're working remotely. Their companies facilitate it and actually encourage it. This is all due to the obviously the uplift in the fibrous in some of the areas, but this seems to be something that our own people, my own daughter is planning for her future, and this is something that she would hope to do, that she would be able to work from home in her particular line. This is the future, and this is something that our council would need to be engaging in. So that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. And I do want to bring in Councillor Green. I know you're liaising with IT, but you have a point to make about the voting system. Seamus.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, for letting me in. No, I wasn't able to vote that in the previous time, and I was wanting to just make that clear that I would have been voting for, and but it wouldn't let me submit my vote. So just to make that clear. Thanks,
Okay.
Chair.
No, and that will be noted in the minutes. Thank you, Councillor Green. Okay, now, I hope I've got the order correct here. There's, on WebEx, there's at least 7 or 8 speakers. Okay, thank you for helping with the order. Councillor Keenan.
Yeah, well, I would agree with the motion in principle, yes, but one thing I would say that we need to be wary of is the stress on the housing stock in the area, and I think something like this, where it's a good idea, it'll obviously attract a lot of high off the ground. Sorry, somebody else talking. If I get off the ground, it attract possibly high earners, and it could push working class people further down the ladder with regards to getting a home. So I think something needs to go hand in hand with it, with a public housing strategy and build for people, because I foresee coming on with that. But other than that, I support them all.
Okay, thank you. Next, my computer's not indicating to me. Okay, Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It is important that businesses are allowed to choose what works for them. You know, if home hybrid working suits their business, I suppose it should be. We support it and encourage. For those where it doesn't work, then it shouldn't be placing them at a disadvantage. I suppose it's worth noting that a lot of home working for many people in the district is probably only possible because of access to the broadband delivered through the Project Stratum, funded by money secured by our party, the DUP, from Westminster, the same Westminster that we heard so much negativity about in the last motion. The DUP is happy to support this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor McPhillips, Garvin.
Thank you very much, Chair. And first of all, I just want to thank Councillor Bell and Councillor McLaury for bringing this motion to Council. A very good and worthwhile motion, and has great potential in my view. From the outset, the SDLP group will be supporting the motion. I decided to speak on this on behalf of the group, as I know some of my new neighbours and local residents are actually doing what is being stated in the motion. I believe we have so much going for us in the area. A remote business strategy to promote our region would bring many benefits, including possible new employment opportunities with flexibility for the employees. For the business, it cuts costs and allows them to maybe recruit other employees to the area. Having a remote business strategy helps promote an area like Fermanagh to show as somewhere that gives people a quality of life that would not be available in more built up areas or urban settings. We here in Fermanagh have a quality of life in so many ways that is second to none. From our relatively clean environment to our education offering for young families settling and living in the area. Our leisure and tourism offering is of the highest standards. we should do all we can to promote this type of strategy as a priority, as the motion says, so as not to having to be playing catch up in the future. Having a remote business strategy in place allows an area to be promoted nationally and internationally. So all in all, in the changed world we live in, this can bring nothing but benefits for the area. So the SDLP will be supporting the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. I too would like to commend Councillor Bell and Councillor McLaughlin for bringing forward this important motion. I fully support the proposal that Fermanagh and Omagh should institute and support a remote business strategy. Chair, I think that this will bring considerable benefits to businesses in terms of employment and lowering the costs associated with employing people. It will also provide employees with the opportunity of flexible working, and working from home will certainly reduce travel costs and will reduce the impact on the environment in terms of vehicle emissions. I think if we have the technology there that will facilitate remote working, why not use it? We are now operating in the 21st century. As other members have stated, our council district, Fermanagh and Omagh District Council area, has unrivaled quality of life issues, but our challenge has always been to attract high quality, sustainable jobs into our area. And I think if we promote a remote business strategy, we're going to have a win-win situation for businesses and employees alike. So I want to support the motion, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Corey O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm generally happy with this motion. I think it makes eminent sense. But you do have to question really. We're contrary to what Councillor Elliott's just stated about everyone having a broadband connection. It's the opposite. We have some of the worst rates of broadband disconnections and non-connections in this council area, and that's before people are hit with this tsunami of cost of living increases that are actually disconnecting people because they can't afford to even keep the connections that they have. We've also entire regions of our council area where there's no decent mobile communications signal, and I just wonder how it is we can be serious about remote working if we don't have basic infrastructure attended to. And we only just heard last month confirmation that the money for the Southern Bypass is gone, and that's going to impact our communications, our transport infrastructure and the connectivity around the council, and all that affects this. The other issue, of course, is the public sector employment hubs, which were flagged up as a great idea, and we were certainly supportive of those. But when we saw perhaps the use of the former Southwest College building on Jail Square and in Enniskillen as a site in Enniskillen, we were told that that was too ambitious. So obviously we won't be having that many public sector jobs in this area working remotely. So while it's a great idea, there's a lot of question marks over the seriousness of Stormont parties to actually deliver upon it. And a related issue really is around, and a growing issue, is the poverty of people who are now working from home, having to heat their homes, having to meet much higher connectivity bills than perhaps they would have got away with. There's a lot of economic considerations to this. It's not always that simple. The reality is that many people in our communities are facing a winter where they'll be going into libraries to try and get heated up because they won't be able to live at home. And then we're telling them that we're going to have, working from home is the new thing. So it's a bit disconnected, is all I'd say, insofar as you look what Stormont has or has not done over the last few years, and then you look at the chronic crisis in the cost of living. You just have to question it. But I'm happy enough to support this. But a lot of work needs to happen if it's to become anything more than just another empty proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor McCaffrey, restore.
Garmoglet, Caherly, and yeah, I'm very supportive of this motion, and I do think this is a great way forward for many people coming into the workforce now. Lots of again young people like to take advantage of this, being able to work from home. It opens up a lot more possibilities. It shouldn't just be a privilege. Albeit for jobs where you do have to attend physically, of course, but it shouldn't just be a privilege. And I'm sure that Councillor O'Coffey would agree that we don't want legislation being on the side of the employers in terms of offering some contracts for remote working to other people and not for some others. I think it's hugely beneficial. I obviously would share some of the concerns around potential costs for those working from home having to heat their homes or pay extra connectivity bills. However, I do think that a vast majority of people now like having the option to work remotely where possible. And you see people now doing these digital nomads, being able to travel while working, being able to have more time, more out of work time to yourself. So very supportive of the motion. And of course, Fermanagh and Omagh Council have a duty to promote ourselves in that same way as a place where you can come to visit, live and work in remotely or physically. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McAleer.
Yes, Chair, I'll be fairly brief on this one. I think other councillors and other speakers have kind of covered the broad consensus in support of this motion. There's a huge amount of work to be done on this because the reality is the broadband provision here and the mobile provision here isn't actually workable to maintain or to support this proposal. And we're hearing it across the board, even this evening, during the course of this meeting, where some of those tuning in, their connections are fairly weak. There's obviously ongoing issues in terms of recording votes and actually working and operating online. So there are real issues which have to be addressed. And I think rather than promoting or bigging up something that was there by design to support the rural broadband infrastructure and has been hijacked along the way as something else, and something that unfortunately the people of this district are ultimately losing out on and continue to lose out on until that comes to their doors. That's the major downfall with the proposal here. The second aspect or second point I'd like to make, and it's been touched on before, is that when this working group or when this strategy is being drawn up by the council, that it needs to include, and it will be a failure if it doesn't include, input from workers and from trade unions, because ultimately their members are the people who are going to be doing the jobs and are going to be standing to either benefit or be penalised, as various members have mentioned, through the implementation of this strategy and the ongoing surge that we're seeing to prices, because ultimately what employers are finding is that they're saving money by having people work from home or work remotely. They're not having to pay their own electricity costs, their own broadband costs, whatever it may be. So that's hugely important, and I think I would give this motion support, but with the inclusion of input from workers and unions, and also the call for increased investment and equality or equity of rural fibre broadband provision, which is key to making this a realistic proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and for summing up, please, Councillor Bell.
I suppose I'll give it brief. Thanks for all, I suppose, the supportive comments. Some of you did raise concerns, and you are absolutely correct. Those concerns are to be had. I suppose that's why I wanted this group to be created, so all these issues can be hashed out and discussed and solved. Councillor McAleer, your last comment about continuing to lobby for improved broadband access, I would be absolutely surprised if that was not the first line put into the strategy, and I imagine it will be. I had a conversation with an individual who I talked about this motion with. I'll not name him because I don't know if it's appropriate to do it in the chamber, but he mentioned to me that if Mid-Ulster Council came out with a similar strategy to this, he would cry. And I suppose that's where that line in the motion comes. We need to get ahead of this. I think this is coming down the line and it's coming quickly. And I think it's important for Mananoma to get ahead of the curve. Thank you.
Okay. And so that motion has been proposed. It has been seconded. Everyone has spoke on it and there's agreement, members. Okay. So that motion, I'm going to check with everybody. There isn't any dissent to this motion. No. So we'll interpret that as agreement. Thanks very much, Matthew. Councillor Bell. Now we're moving on to the third motion, and I'm going to call Councillor, I'll just get him up on the, Councillor Robinson to speak. Proposed, thank you.
You, Chair. Read the motion. The offensive and sectarian chanting on a video taken in Dromore, where it cannot be justified and should be condemned by all right-thinking people. And in particular, disappointing to see young people, most of whom weren't even alive during the Troubles, glorifying terrorists in this way. There never was and never can be any justification for terrorism. Unfortunately, there are some in our society who do attempt to justify and explain terrorism. Those comments, including from elected representatives, only fuel the kind of sectarian behaviour. And while the video was filmed during the time of the Ulster Fleadh was taking place in Dromore, we recognise that it was not a part of the official Fleadh programme, and we welcome a very clear statement taken by the Executive Committee of the Ulster Fleadh. Their statement was not only issued quickly, but also made it very clear that they would be taking action against any member who was involved in this chanting or any other sectarian activity. They also rightly pointed out that this done nothing to build trust or relations across the community. Fleadh organisers demonstrated leadership where others have failed, and there should be a clear and distinct message going forward from the Council this evening that we do not condone that type of sectarian glorification of terrorism, which was on display in that video. We are happy to stand alongside the vast majority of our society, including the Executive Committee of the Ulster Fleadh, in opposing such sectarian and damaging activity. The question is whether everyone else in the chamber is prepared to stand alongside the Ulster Fleadh too. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Buchanan. And now, Mark.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to second the motion before members this evening and support the comments from my colleague, Councillor Robinson. As you know, I'm a local councillor for West Road, and it was brought to my attention very quickly. And I was very concerned and saddened that the video footage, which was been circulated of IRA chanting, which took place in Dromore the same weekend as the Ulster Fleadh. Many people were very troubled that this had taken place. To some, it brought back memories. Those who had lost loved ones at the hands of such a terrorist organisation, and they were now being glorified in song at this in the video footage. I know for many, the Fleadh in Dromore was a very much looked forward to a community event. There was lots of talent on display, and no better place to host it than in West Tyrone. But unfortunately, this video and what took place put a dampener on what should have been a very successful and enjoyable event for all. I too concur that the organisers have shown clear leadership and they must be congratulated, and their promise to take action against any member involved will be welcomed by everyone. And I would echo completely their words that this instance does nothing to build trust and relations across the community. We heard earlier about moving forward together, and we do want to move forward together, but this will do nothing to aid that process. So I second the motion, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I don't have any indications on WebEx, but I do have in the chamber, Councillor Wilson.
Well, this motion, yes, I support it as well, and I agree with the sentiments of the Speaker, and that I have been at, well, quite a few band parades, and I have been in Finton not that very long ago, and I had the only place I could get parked was outside a pub, And some of the young people in the area came out, and obviously they were aware of who it was, and they spoke to me, and we had a very amicable discussion, which was really the way it should be. But I did get I had been approached by some of my mid-Tyrone constituents that sometime back a pipe band and a few Orange Brethren were making their way to the local church, playing hymn tunes and that, and passing a pub. They were called all sorts of names and abused. And now, when they were returning on the same journey, the same thing happened. Obviously, the owner of the pub, I don't think, was in agreement with it, but he couldn't. It was a small section of what was there, and I think the PSNA maybe visited him lately, but or after that. But that is the problem that we have. It doesn't. Not everybody maybe wants that, but at a time when we hear so much about shared futures and respect for each other's culture, we often wonder, do these sentiments mean a lot to some people? But yeah, I would support the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Move now to Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Chair, I want to speak in support of this motion. I think, Chair, we can all agree that the Ulster Fleadh in Dromore was a wonderful success, which saw the coming together of many, many talented musicians who competed, showing their talents and bringing great pleasure and enjoyment to everyone who celebrates Irish culture. I feel that the activities of a small number of people should not be allowed to detract from what was really a very successful event. And I want to publicly congratulate all of those who were involved in organising the event. I do also want to welcome the swift actions of the Executive Committee of the Ulster Fleadh in condemning the actions of a few who sought to glorify acts of violence. And these acts of violence have brought great distress and suffering to many people within our society. And in moving forward on the agenda of peace, understanding, reconciliation, forgiveness, all of this cannot happen where violence is glorified. And I condemn that attitude. But nevertheless, I welcome the fact that the Executive Committee will seek to take action against those involved, and hopefully they will set down a marker that this type of activity won't be tolerated. And Chair, these types of sectarian chants are not unique in any way, and our media is full of instances of often high-profile individuals caught making sectarian comments or participating in sectarian chants. And this is not acceptable in our society and needs to be dealt with in a very effective way to send out that message. So having said all of that, Chair, I'm happy to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Keenan.
I suppose the first thing I'd say is the people in Dromore that was chanting, they don't have a monopoly in chanting. As Councillor Dean has said, you know, it's not an isolated issue. But I think that this motion is hypocritical because a direct result of the motion will to be actually raise sectarian tensions, both within the council and the wider community. And I think it's disappointing, and it could be seen as a tit-for-tat public attack rising from the sectarian singing in Orange Hall a few months ago. I suppose, does the DUP seriously think that it's in the public interest to be raising sectarian tensions by bringing divisive sectarian motions into the council? The glorification of state violence is an issue that's never spoken about from the DUP. British colonialism is evident year round in this district, hanging from lampposts. And British colonialism has killed millions of people on this island from the time of the Great Genocide and from 11th century onwards. I think a question that might be in a lot of people's lips here is also, is this motion a distraction motion? A distraction from the conditions that people are currently living under, and a distraction from what we as a council should be addressing and trying to sort out with this current cost of capitalism crisis. So I think this motion is divisive and a distraction and totally unneeded, and I'll be voting against it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Keenan. Councillor Garrity.
Thank you very much, Chair, for letting me in here to speak on the motion. And I believe that this motion is a distraction. I think the previous speaker there, Councillor Keenan, referred to another very uncouth incident which circulated on social media that was extremely upsetting for many that I would know, and I've no doubt that many were upset by maybe the circulation of the video that the councillors Buchanan and Robinson are referring to. By bringing it to the council like this is giving it airtime, and that's not something that people like that need warranted for. That sort of person or people are in a minority. They do not represent the vast amount of people that are attending such events. And when I say such events, I'm referring to other incidents in social media that have come across and which we choose to ignore at large where possible, because they are so upsetting. And by giving it any fuel as almost backing up some of these chants and rants and songwriting events that have happened throughout the country. The council did give us clarification very quickly. Also, the Donohoe Cultus Cultúr and Ulster Fleadh organising committee made it quite clear that this was an event. This was not an event that was supported or arranged by them and was not part of the Ulster Fleadh. So this, if we want to try and police, for the want of a better word, activities that go on in wee corners of pubs across Fermanagh and Omagh, we'll have motions in here far too often that we can't deal with. This is not relevant. It is divisive, and it's disappointing that it's come here, because that's not what I'm about or what my party colleagues are about. We do not support any sort of activity like that, but this has just been brought in to cause tension, perhaps, like Councillor Keenan said, a distraction, and therefore we are not going to be supporting this motion because we believe it is not relevant to this council at all, because it happened in a pub somewhere in the corner of Dromore. We don't know. This could, what's going on in the corner of Lisbalaw or Balik or Trillick or wherever we are tonight. We can't manage that. We have a council and we have a business to run, and this sort of thing is just not helpful and does not represent the people that I represent, and that's people across the entire community. They would be all disappointed that this is the level that the DUP have went to tonight, to drag this up when we had great cause to do something similar earlier in the year, and we had just more breeding, and we do not support uncouth activity like this by any members in our society. We will not be supporting the motion, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. And I suppose it's not often that I agree with the previous speaker, but I think Councillor Yardy is quite right in this instance, and indeed Councillor Keenan. You know, it has been referenced, the first of all, I suppose, the timing of this this motion. I know this is, I think, the third meeting that has been on the agenda. I know it was withdrawn at one of those meetings, but at a time of a soaring cost of living crisis, that the DUP would resort to this sort of sectarian saber rattling, I think it is quite shameful. And as been referenced before, where were the DUP motions back in June when members of a Loyal Orange Lodge or members within a Loyal Orange Lodge venue sang about the murder of a young Catholic woman on her honeymoon? I think this selective outrage is nothing more than a smokescreen to distract from this party's feelings, and it's the feelings to the people of this district and beyond to take any positive steps towards showing any form of leadership when it comes to tackling the cost of greed crisis, or the lack of access to a budget, or indeed anything other than stamping their feet and throwing the toys out of the pram about something that's come about directly from the consequences of something they fully endorsed, and that's Brexit, Chair. So I'm actually going to propose that we move to a vote at this stage under standing orders, because we're wasting time discussing this. The organisation, which this event wasn't even at, has come out and strongly condemned it. The council has condemned it. We're wasting our time. We're wasting time that we could be discussing other items on the agenda. So I propose that we do that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. We'll have a proposal within this, which is in order. It would obviously require a seconder. Councillor Coyle is seconding that. Is that agreed, members, that we go to the vote? Okay. We'll go to a vote then. We'll set up a vote now because we do anticipate dissension, and if I can be assisted with the setting up of a vote. Thank you. Okay, request for a recorded vote. The access state.
Sorry, Chair, so you had 15 votes for, 19 votes against, so the motion falls.
Okay, thank you. That brings motion 3 of 6 to a conclusion. And we're moving now to the fourth debate. And I'm going to go to Councillor O'Coffey to propose the motion, the fourth motion. Thank you, Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm taking it as read, the motion. On behalf of relatives and survivors, this council has twice already demanded answers to the process surrounding the closure of Valley Nursing Home in Clogher in 2020. I would like to commence by thanking the other council members for their ongoing support for the campaign for truth and openness. And as ever, I want to particularly thank Councillor Deehan for ongoing support. In a couple of months, we have obtained more answers and more information than relatives have obtained in the last 2 years. That alone justifies our efforts. This is an issue of immediate relevance to our council area, with 21 of the 53 residents coming from the Weston Health and Social Care Trust area, the overwhelming majority of whom would have come from Fermanagh and Omagh. The ministerial letter, which we received last month, admitted that 14 residents of the 53 died in the weeks following the transfer. I commence by noting that this figure directly contradicts that of 7 deaths quoted in the Lesson Learned review. It is asserted by Minister Swan, without proof, that these deaths were all from pre-existing conditions. The letter from the coroner's office confirms that they have not done any Article 2 or 3 investigations into these deaths, or I believe to fulfill their role to investigate unexplained and unexpected deaths. The coroner was not involved in investigating the deaths to identify the true cause of death. The question families remain asking is, how does the minister know his assertion to be true? I also want to challenge the figure of 14 deaths that have been quoted. I understand from relatives that this figure only applies to deaths after the nursing home was closed at the end of 2020, early 2021. But patients had already been transferred prior to closure by the Western Trust in the early months of 2020, when the uncertainty over the home was raised in the first case. I understand that there were 6 further deaths of residents transferred before the closure. This amounts to 20 deaths overall, a grim and concerning tally. The assertion that all 20 deaths of the total, 53, were all from pre-existing conditions seems to suggest an undeniably and unnaturally high natural mortality rate for a nursing home. The mortality rate alone, even if you calculate it only at the basis of 14, would justify much further scrutiny and investigation. And today I have further information that in the 18 months to the end of 2020, there were approximately only 5 to 6 deaths of patients in the Valley Nursing Home itself. So that's a comparison. Added to these concerns, as I've referenced previously, is the fact that the GP associated with this nursing home was not involved in the transfer, and at least 3 nursing homes into which residents were transferred, 2 in the Western Trust area and 1 other outside of this region, had active COVID outbreaks at the time. Meanwhile, the Valley Nursing Home, dubbed publicly before its forced closure as the worst care home in Northern Ireland by the RQIA, lost no patients to COVID and remained COVID-free until the patients were discharged. I note further that at no time did the Western Trust voice any concerns over quality of care provided at the Valley Nursing Home. The lessons learned summary speaks of an emergency closure, but as we have read in the press, when the department was pushed to justify this wording, which carries with it a very specific meaning and content, they retreated, saying that they only meant an emergency in terms of the time frame for alternative accommodation to be found. There was no immediate danger or no threat to life. From everything I have read, the closure resulted from contractual arrangements with which the RQIA disagreed. I would pose the obvious question whether the closure was necessary or right. Why didn't the Department for Health intervene and take over the facility and run it directly along the lines they wished? That way, no one would have had to be moved, and I think lives would have been saved. All that said, I'm asking my fellow councillors to support this motion and the demand for an independent public inquiry so that relatives and survivors can get the truth they deserve, and from lessons learned from this debacle to be learnt and applied elsewhere. We need to put patients and their families at the centre of healthcare. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm pleased to second this motion brought forward by Councillor O'Coffey, and I would ask members to support our call for an independent public inquiry into the circumstances and the lessons learned from the closure of the Valley Nursing Home. This report, which has been brought forward, is a very brief one. It's certainly lacking in detail, and I understand that there are a significant number of inaccuracies. Chair, we are bringing forward this motion because this council has always demonstrated itself to be concerned about the welfare and well-being of our elderly population. Their rights and their welfare are of paramount importance to us as a public body. We know that nursing and residential homes play an increasing role in the care of our elderly population, and we value and commend the work that is done by these institutions. However, in this case, in the case of the Valley Nursing Home, I understand that disastrous consequences arose from the closure of this home and the transfer of these vulnerable residents to other institutions. And certainly the statistics speak for themselves, Chair, the very, very high number of people who died in very shortly after their transfer out of the Valley Nursing Home. I appreciate that Requia do an important job, and they do have a responsibility to uphold standards. But many of the relatives, the residents and staff refuted allegations made from Requia regarding the quality of care delivered to residents in that institution. And certainly the families of residents, particularly those who are deceased, have a right to understand the circumstances and to get explanations as to how those decisions were made. And certainly we are dealing with a vulnerable population. Many of these residents were unable to understand and participate in the discussion, and therefore were not able to exercise their choice. And certainly the relatives would feel that their voices were not heard. Staff of that home, professional staff who worked hard to care for residents, suffered great trauma as well from the vilification and demonisation of the Valley Nursing Home as the worst care home in Northern Ireland. I think we need answers, Chair.
3 minutes have elapsed now. Just a concluding point. Josephine, thank you.
I think we need answers, and an independent public inquiry is the way to go, Chair. So I would ask members to support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll go into the chamber now for Councillor Warrington. Then it will be Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. And I, of course, want to start my remarks by passing on my thoughts and sympathies with all those families who lost loved ones in the Valley Nursing Home and who are sadly no longer with us. I absolutely recognise the facilities such as this are much more than just a place to stay and receive some care and support. For the residents, and especially the permanent residents, they are home, and the staff are like extended members of the family. And that is why we have not only a legal but also a moral duty to ensure that the care is safe, sufficient and high quality. So it's no surprise that care homes are a highly regulated and monitored business. Indeed, the health and social care system would rightly questioned and criticised, including by us as elected representatives and by the media, if serious concerns were being raised which were later being overruled or ignored. Closure of a care home is always a last resort. However, when the regulator reaches a decision to deregister a care home provider, it does not so do to protect the safety and the well-being of residents. So when on the 4th of November 2020, the RQIA issued the notice to deregister the Valley Nursing Home, it will only have done so if it was absolutely convinced that it was the right thing to do. This was the second time in a year a notice proposal had been issued, and with the first only been lifted after very significant intervention from the trusts and the regulator. Let's remember that November 2020 notice came only after a near 11-hour inspection on the 21st of October 2020 in response to, once again, a growing number of very serious concernings, including management, staffing and governance arrangements, the physical environment at the home and its management of the COVID-19 outbreak. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, these facilities were home for residents, so a decision to close will have a big impact on residents and their families. And given the age and often frailty of many residents, that impact of closure will have been compounded even further. That's why I'd like to think the Trust did absolutely everything in their power to work with residents and their families, and all evidence to date shows that this was the case. Whilst I don't underestimate the stress felt by staff, residents and families at the time, we must forget whilst the home was open, there were serious and repeated concerns being raised. So the decision to close will have been taken in a wider consideration of all of that. It's really sad that so many former residents are no longer with us. It's been a year and a half from the home was closed, and since then, 14 of the 53 residents have unfortunately passed away. But we need to be very careful as we direct or indirect insinuation the closure of the home contributed to their passing. While I look at the press reporting,
Final point, please.
While I look at the press reporting in relation to this issue, some of which has been fact-based, but other elements less so. There has been zero proof of what indeed was the case. I will also respectfully point out, and I will conclude now, I had more to add, but I will respectfully point out that this Clare Valley Nursing Home is outside of her Fermanagh and Omagh council area under the council of Mid Ulster. So why are we bringing this motion forward?
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll go now to Councillor McAleer.
Thanks, Chair. Not that the mover or the seconder will need me to answer on their behalf, but as was originally stated, the residents within the home came from this district, so it's unfortunate just that the previous speaker doesn't have the compassion to maybe take that on board when he's lobbying accusations across the floor. What I would say just in relation to this is, and I will be brief on this, it's a strong motion, it's well researched, and it's one which will hopefully unite the chamber tonight. And this is exactly the sort of motion that we as a council should be bringing and should be passing. I commend Councillors O'Coffey and Deehan for bringing this motion to the council tonight, and I fully support and endorse this motion and would call on others to do likewise. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Keenan.
Yeah, well, I was just going to raise the point there, but the Valley Nursing Home does border within a few miles the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council area, and many of the families that would have been in it would be from this area. And again, I'd also like to commend Coffey and Councillor Dean for bringing this motion forward. I think the facts surrounding the case, and as elected representatives, we have to be the voice for the vulnerable, and we need to defend the vulnerable. I think that's what this motion is doing, and I think everyone should support it. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Eamon. And finally, I'm going to go to Councillor O'Coffey to sum up.
Yeah, thanks, Cahirlach. Yeah, I want to thank all the contributions, and I also want to thank all the councillors for allowing us to bring this forward. I want to pick up the point that was finished there with Councillor Keenan. Like, if we're here as elected representatives, we know what's happening in virtually every department in government above our heads, the lack of accountability, the frustration, the failure to deliver, and people are really suffering under all of that. And if we don't stand up for our communities and for the vulnerable people who have virtually no other recourse, I think it really poses questions as to what we are doing. So I would encourage all the councillors to support this. This is for truth and some openness and accountability, lessons to be learned. The Minister Swan has said, and I support him on this 100%, that he wants to put patients and the families at the centre of health care policy making. And the question is really, have the lessons that should have been learned from this closure been learned? And is it not a case really of denial if we're just assuming that all the 20, because there was 14 after it closed and 6 before, the 20 of the 53 who died after the closure of this, all of those had preconditions that meant that that this was not a factor in it. And there's been no coroner's investigation. And as Councillor McAleer stated, I think the majority of those actually came from our council area. So I think it's a priori we should all support this. We need to get to the bottom of what happened here. We need to make sure that this never happens again to any other residents in a nursing home in our area or close to it. And the lessons should be learned. There's no problem. People, there are many issues with our health and social care system. Everyone is doing their very utmost, but we need to make sure that the lessons are being learned so that this doesn't repeat. So I urge everyone to support this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Now, am I in a position to maybe conclude that there isn't any stated opposition to the motion, or did I get that wrong? So if there is stated opposition, then we will go to a vote. Councillor Warrington, just to conclude on that, please.
Yes, our party are not going to get involved in political debates on health like this, and we will be voting against the motion. Thank you.
So again, we'll now be setting up a vote. Okay. Takes a wee minute usually.
Okay, Chair, so the votes are, if there were 20 votes for, 14 votes against, so the motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. Now, members, we're going to go on to the fifth motion of the evening, and this motion is proposed by Councillor Keenan and seconded by Councillor McAleer. So we'll be taking those two speakers in sequence. Also in receipt of an amendment from Councillor O'Reilly, and I'm minded to take that immediately after. So I'll hand over now to Councillor Keenan.
Yeah, well, following the successful rally for Truth and Justice for Noah Donohoe and Enniskillen on Saturday the 17th of September, this rally was organised by local community activists and supported by a number of councillors from FODC, including yourself, Ciarán. After this, the organisers of the campaign requested that we as a council take further action and bring the following motion before the council. The motion is as follows: that this council supports fully the Justice for Noah campaign, and in doing so, we echo the family's call for the Chief Constable, Simon Bourne, to resign from his position over his failures and the failures of the PSNI under his watch in the mishandling of the investigation of Noah's death. We send this request in writing to the Chief Constable. From Anonymous, the council requests that there should now be a rigorous, open and transparent police investigation where every avenue is explored to get justice for Noah and his family. We also call on all politicians who currently sit on the policing board to step away from this body in protest, as it is failing in its stated objectives, in this instance being able to hold the PSNI to account. This has been shown beyond doubt with the unnecessary and contentious use of the PIA, the Public Interest Immunity Certificate in this case. Finally, we request that this motion is sent in writing to all other councils, north and south, as well as the relevant leaders of the political parties that sit on the policing board. I hope that the campaign for truth and justice for Noah is one that all councillors here can fully support, and I hope that this motion, which is part of that, gets full support here tonight.
Okay, thank you very much, Corleor. Corleor McGillier, can I bring you in now as the seconder?
Ciarán, yeah. I think, as was discussed on the 17th and has been discussed in the follow-on from the tragic events surrounding this, what's really noticeable or notable about this tragic case are the many things that the PSNI failed to do after Noah went missing. There's serious questions that remain unanswered concerning every single aspect of Noah's disappearance and the subsequent police investigation. They quickly ruled out foul play in the death of Noah Donohoe, who disappeared while cycling home from his home to meet friends across the city in Belfast. What the family would like to know, and what many others would like to know, is why was this? Was it incompetence or was it contrived incompetence? Did they already know at this point that there was something wrong and there was no point in following up on this? Noah was a 14-year-old boy who was found dead, naked in a storm drain in North Belfast in June 2020, 6 days after being reported missing. On that day, on the day of the event, I recall that my own wife was 8 months pregnant the time we heard that news, and I remember the impact that had on us as a family. It had on my wife, and I can only try to fathom the impact that would have had on Fiona Donohoe and her family. It also bears pointing out the possible censorship of the press, given the lack of coverage over this entire debacle. It's referenced again the fact that the PIA, the Public Interest Immunity Certificate, has been used in a case where the police are claiming no foul play, a claim they made even before there was a post-mortem. The use of a PIA has cruelly compounded the shocking and tragic events for the Donohoe family. We need and we have to demand that justice is done for Noah, for Fiona, for the family. That's why the PSNI's request, the former British Secretary of State's agreement to use a public interest immunity certificate, is disappointing, wrong, shameful and shocking. But more than that, I would question the continued participation in the policing boards and indeed the policing and community safety partnerships on which elected members sit. I think policing board members and PCSP members must consider their relationship with the PSNI over how Noah's case has been mishandled. There should be no backroom discussions with the PSNI until the PII is scrapped and there's proper transparent attempt to get justice for Noah Donohoe. Indeed, if there are members listening in tonight, I would call on them and their colleagues to resign from those positions. Severing that link with the PSNI would send a strong, unambiguous message to this campaign and to the Donohoe family that you'll not be associated with a process which attempts to withhold information from a mother about the death of her son. All the family's asking for at the end of the day is truth. That's all they want. That's all we want. And indeed, if the PSNI is certain about how Noah died or they know anything about his death, why are they unwilling to release key information? So we send a call from this council tonight that we support Noah's army. We support their determination to see this through for Fiona, for Niamh, for the truth and the justice, and ultimately for Noah himself. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go now to Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Chair. And I wish to propose an amendment to the motion here in front of us, and that amendment is certainly on my screen here as Amendment 1.
It's available on decision time for all members to view.
Okay.
Because it has been provided in writing prior to the meeting. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. And I think it's, as the two previous speakers have said, it is very, very important that justice for Noah, for his family, for his mum Fiona, and for the wider family and for society is achieved here and is seen to be achieved. But I think it is also very, very important that we are not distracted and sidetracked, and that we keep our focus on what is very, very important for the family here, and that is to get to the bottom, get to the truth, find out what has happened and why 6 days had elapsed when Noah had gone missing before he was found. It is important that we use every avenue to be able to try to unearth what those 6 days contained and the information that will be very important to answer some of the questions for Fiona. So, Chair, the amendment that I am proposing here is so that we are very clear on what this is about. It's about justice for Noah. It is about supporting the campaign for justice, and it is keeping that singular focus on there, and that the Secretary of State should withdraw the PII, the Public Interest Immunity Certificate here. In this case, we have a long history of difficulties with policing in this state as to how we get answers. And I think that this Public Immunity Certificate is not doing anything to bring about clarity in this case, and we are, as part of this amendment, calling for the withdrawal of the PII. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and do I have a seconder for that amendment? Okay, Councillor Withers, I'll bring you in now, Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to second that amendment proposal from Councillor O'Reilly. I think, just like the state as well, our support for the Justice for Noah campaign, and we want to see truth and justice. And I think this amendment actually reflects what needs to be coming from tonight's meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so whenever you have a proposal seconded and then an amendment seconded, you deal with the amendment first, just to make that clear to everybody in the meeting. I go now to Corlear O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I was glad to be invited to a recent protest by the Noah's Army campaign, and I think this is an issue that really speaks to everyone who's had a child. A 14-year-old boy went out and he didn't come home again, and understandably, his mother and family are looking for some answers. And what we have here appears to be a complete failure to supply answers, clarity, transparency, openness, and accountability. All the things that we want from our police service. I am very supportive of the concept of a community-led, community accountable police service in Northern Ireland. We need it desperately. We need to see real accountability. We need to see a police service that we can have confidence in. But I think that this really has struck home in a way, just and exposed the degree in a very like it's a non-controversial case. It should be, but there's no openness in the accountability. We have a public interest immunity certificate applied for by the police service in conjunction with the Secretary of State, not accountable to any police board, any police structure locally. And, you know, how is that building confidence in anything? And I can't see how just making another empty call for something to, you know, for the PII to be removed, like is in the amendment here, is going to achieve anything here. There is no real accountability, in my honest opinion, in policing in Northern Ireland at the moment. We have failed to see the sort of policing model that any one of us really would want to see in terms of accountability and engagement. And I think we've had the same issue when it came to, you know, the decision made at some high level to, you know, provide hugely costly security for mining companies to transport explosives and many other decisions, and not even getting into the historical issues. So I, for one, do not see that this amendment addresses the issue. The issue is this model is not delivering accountable policing, and as such, there's a mother with a 14-year-old son who's never going to come home alive, and she has been told that she can't get truth because of a public interest immunity certificate. What public interest is it when a child doesn't come home when they're 14 years old? What possible justification is there for that? And I think at the very least, people should step away from completely ineffectual so-called accountability structures until there is actually some form of accountability. So that's where I'm standing. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Eamon, I'm going to let you in towards the conclusion of the debate because you are the original proposer, but I'll go first till Councillor Gannon, then Councillor Swift, then Councillor Deehan. Councillor Gannon.
Thank you, Chair. As well as yourself and numerous other councillors, I was very happy to have attended the rally in Enniskillen. Have to say well done to the organisers. It's a very important issue, and it's obviously touched many people across the country. And I think at the heart of this, we can't forget that about 2.5 years ago, a young 14-year-old was lost, and the family had their world turned upside down. Noah's mother, Fiona, suffered a loss no parent should ever have to face. The loss of her child. Grief and pain being felt by Fiona and the wider Donohoe family is unimaginable. The SDLP supports the Donohoe family's efforts to discover the truth about what happened to Noah. The application for a PII certificate has caused significant confusion and further hurt for the Donohoe family during this difficult time. And it is difficult for many people to understand why the certificate was issued in Noah's case and what exactly it covers. Those in positions of authority need to answer the questions that people have and address the serious concerns that exist around this PII certificate and why it is being used. Keeping the PII in place only raises questions for so many. And the Donohoe family have our support in their search for truth. I think the motion is disappointing because it doesn't focus solely on supporting the family, but instead calls for resignations and disengagement with policing. We have a complex and controversial history of policing here in the North, and political and public engagement and oversight of policing is vital, and to disengage would undermine the recommendations of the Patton report and the mandate that this report had from the Good Friday Agreement as a key part of that. In fact, the motion as it stands without the amendment is frankly potentially asking our society to take a backward step in terms of accountability, because we need to have people in positions to ask the questions that we are asking here today and to try and hold those in authority to account. And I think suggestions of disengaging with policing are inappropriate and not the correct way to go forward. Therefore, we can't support the motion as proposed originally, but we believe the amendment allows us as a council to show our full support to the Donohoe family, as the withdrawal of the PII certificate will allow Fiona and the family to access documents that they believe are vital to revealing the truth and helping them in their search for justice. The amendment puts the Donohoe family and their calls for justice to the fore and the focus, and that's what this should be about. We live in a society where too many families have had to take up a campaign for truth in the name of their loved ones, and the public way in which the Donohoes have been forced to bear their pain has been
Over
traumatic.
3 minutes now. Adam, just conclude, please.
Yeah, no problem. So it's been traumatic for the family and those who knew and loved Noah, and we can't not allow the Donohoe family to suffer for years and decades. So we'll be supporting the amendment. Chair, thank you.
Okay. And then in the practice of going back to the chamber, then back to WebEx, where there are indications in the chamber, I'm going to Councillor Coyle next, followed by Councillor Swift, Councillor Deehan and Councillor McLaughlin, before a return till Councillor Keenan.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I want to speak in support of the amendment. There's a petition of over 300,000 signatures in support of Fiona Donohoe to see all of the evidence of the coroner's inquest into the death of her son. As a very proud mum of 5 black children, I've got 3 boys and 2 girls, mixed race, if anybody's confused about that. As soon as I heard of this case and I saw the police in the very first interview, as if it was, it was all right, there wasn't too much to worry about. It did remind me of the Stephen Lawrenson case that was on TV a few weeks back. And it just, I was living in England at that time as well, and it's very worrying that the PSNI and the British government haven't learnt from that, and the heartache that Stephen's mum and dad experienced at that time. Firstly, because they lost their son, but then because of the actions or the non-actions of the police at the time. And this is what this reminds me of. It's definitely in the public interest to know the truth. For the mother of this young 14-year-old boy, she needs to know exactly what happened to her son. The British Secretary of State and the PSNI request for P11II, is wrong. Hundreds of thousands of people across this island and across the world are standing with Fiona in her quite disgraceful battle. Disgraceful because she shouldn't have to do this, to find out the truth and get justice for her son, Noah. And we need to stay focused on what is needed. We need transparency in the truth, and we need the PII to be withdrawn and not get bogged down into who's sitting on policing boards and PCSPs. That's not what this is about. This is about getting truth and transparency for Fiona and justice for Noah. So I support the amendment.
Thank you. And Councillor Swift.
Well, I can support the motion and I fully support the truth and justice for Noah Donohoe and his family, and indeed all families who seek truth and justice. I must point out that, where it is mentioned about police need to investigate and police need to have transparent investigations, police cannot investigate police feelings effectively. That must be done independently, in my humble opinion. And we all know that public issue immunity certificates have been used for quite a long time now. It has always been unacceptable, and it is most unacceptable in this current day and age also. I still contend my position that has always been the policing partnerships and the policing boards have always been meaningless talking shops with no legislative power or authority, as they have always been, and upholding them really only binds people closer to what is a British state, which also gives cover to inevitable failing, shortcomings, and the repressive actions of the police protecting the state. And I'm talking about the Secretary of State in this particular instance also. So therefore, I just wish to conclude by saying, yes, this particular campaign has my full support, as do all other families seeking truth and justice, and I will be supporting the first motion in this instance. Gurmagat.
Thank you, Gurmagat, Bernice. Moving on now to Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Chair, I think it's wholly appropriate that as a councillor, as a council, we should be debating this issue tonight. And I know that when Noah went missing, the general public were very concerned and were greatly saddened, shocked, and bewildered at the tragic and distressing circumstances of his death. And I just want to use this opportunity to express my sincere condolences to Fiona and the wider O'Donoghue family and their friends on the death of this beautiful 14-year-old boy. It is impossible for us to imagine, Chair, the unspeakable grief and pain suffered by Fiona as Noah's mother and the wider family. And I think the strength of this campaign is testimony to the courage and determination of Fiona and her family to seek out the truth of what happened to Noah, to ensure that no other family needs to undergo this trauma. I want to speak in support of the amended motion only because I believe, Chair, that widespread resignations of the Chief Constable and the Policing Board will only serve to delay what needs to happen, i.e. there needs to be a full, open and rigorous investigation into the circumstances surrounding Noah's death. I think it is appropriate that we should call for the withdrawal of the Public Interest Immunity Certificate, because it is in the public interest to know exactly what happened to Noah. What Fiona and her family suffered was a parent's worst nightmare. And, everything must be done to bring the circumstances of his death into the public domain, and also to make the police accountable for their actions and for the decisions that they made at that time. So I support the amended motion, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Deehan. Councillor McCloughery. Go to you. The councillor is in
Thank you,
WebEx.
Chair.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. We have nothing but sympathy for the family of Noah Donohoe, especially his mother Fiona. However, we have serious concerns about both motion and the amendment. Early last month, the presiding coroner for Northern Ireland, Mr. Justice Michael Humphreys, who has had access to all files and who was the person who can review a public PII, said that disclosing the information would create a risk to the public interest, but said he wanted to give assurances that nothing has been redacted which shows that any third party was involved in Noah Donohue's death, nor would suggest that there has been any cover-up in the course of this investigation. The redactions in the files relate to the reference numbers, grading of intelligence, information relating to police sources, and details of PSNI methodologies. The PSNI argued that this closing the information, which includes detail on police methodologies and source handling, would damage national security interests. And in his judgment, Justice Humphreys said disclosure of the redacted material would give rise to real risk of serious harm to the public interest. Mr. Justice Humphreys added that the redactions applied for by the PSNI are no more than the minimum necessary to ensure the real risk of harm is mitigated. This challenge is a direct challenge to the independence of our judiciary, and we cannot support the motion that is before us. We sincerely hope that the inquest, which is due to start soon, answers the family's questions around the tragic disappearance and death of Noah, but we cannot support this motion in its current form.
And essentially, John, I think you're referring to the amended motion because that's what we're dealing with at this point in time. But with that, then, I want to take my personal opportunity to restate my full support for Noah's family in their search for truth and justice into all aspects of his disappearance and death. And it is entirely wrong that a public immunity certificate, public interest immunity certificate, would be requested in the first instance by the PSNI and then granted by the NIO and the British government. Secondly, it does raise further suspicion in the minds of the wider community. The certificate does need to be withdrawn, and I want to express my solidarity with the Donohoe family as well. So with that, I want to now go to the original motion proposer, Eamon Keenan, Councillor Keenan, and to perhaps try to direct Eamon's remarks to the amendment, which we'll be voting on shortly. Thank you.
Yes, well, with regards to the amendment, it focuses solely on the PAA, and what it fails to address is the failure of the PSNI to investigate this case properly, and the failure of the policing board to hold the police to account. If we support an unaccountable police force in this instance, where does it stop? And if we support a policing board that cannot be held to account, that can't hold the policing board to account, where does that stop? And is the legislation more important than the facts? And the facts are that this police force has refused to properly investigate a child's death, and the policing board has done nothing to hold this force to account. It's very easy to just blame the British Secretary of State here, but this is clearly a lot more complex than that. The amendment, in my view, is a watered down version of the motion, and it does not promote transparency or accountability, and it will not drive forward the quest for justice that Noah and his family deserves. And the request for the resignation is a request, I believe, from the family of Noah. And if the members are here are serious about supporting Noah and his family, then this is the action requested, and this is the action must be followed.
Okay, Councillor Keenan. So, I've already heard that there is divided opinion on this particular amended motion that we're going to vote on first. So we're going to vote on the amendment, and we're going to open up that vote now with the help of IT. Thank you.
Through the chair, recorded vote.
Okay, Alison wants to make an intervention.
No, Chair, it's just to clarify, the request for a recorded vote has to come immediately as the vote is called. So it came in too late, I'm afraid. It's again contrary to standing orders to proceed subsequently.
The vote is now open. Okay.
Okay, Chair, so in terms of the amendment, there were 14 votes for, 13 votes against, and 5 abstentions. So the amendment is carried, and that now becomes the substantive motion.
Okay, thank you. So we've dealt with 5 motions, 5 out of 6. Okay, sorry. Oh, okay. Okay. So even at this stage, okay. So I go now for a vote on the substantive motion as amended. Okay, but I still facilitate the proposer and seconder, or proposer, not the seconder, but the proposer of the original motion. Okay, so we'll go to Councillor Keenan. If he wants to make further comment.
Sorry, Ciara, what was it?
You do have the right now for further commentary, Eamon, as the proposer of the original motion, but you're now commenting on the substantive motion which has been amended. It's now the substantive motion.
I'm disappointed that the amended one has passed and passed with 1 vote and 5 abstentions. As I said, it is a watered down version and doesn't promote accountability or transparency, but disappointing. But yeah.
Okay, thank you. And that concludes the 5th of 6. Okay, even have to take a vote on that. Okay. Okay. 9:30. Okay. So we're now voting on the substantive motion, which has been amended. So those 4, do we open it up to the IT vote as well? So we're going to have to open up again the IT vote as well. Do that now, please.
Point of order, Chair. Sorry, go Maleshko.
Okay, what is your point of order, Councillor McCaffrey?
Just very quickly, Chair, there was an issue around the voting there on the last one. I don't think my vote was actually recorded. Just want to check that my system's working. Because the poll...
Okay, IT will liaise directly with you, Councillor. IT will do that and the vote has been closed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just state the results.
Lucky.
Chair, so there were 18 votes for, 8 against, and 7 abstentions. So the motion as amended is adopted.
Okay. Thank you. So we're at item.
Chair, can I raise just a point of order? Just a point
Yeah,
of
if it is a
order.
point of order, yeah, definitely would take a point of order.
Thank you, Chair. No, it's just in relation to the procedure around item 17 and the standing orders and the submission of an amendment. Does that need to be seconded officially when it's submitted? Because I only see a proposer on the previous amendment that we've just voted on. So it's just
No, the answer is no, it doesn't have that requirement, doesn't. So it was timely and it was worded appropriately and it was forwarded in writing. So we were very satisfied that it met the requirements of standing orders. Okay, thank you. Going to go to 10.6, and this will be proposed by Councillor Warrington and seconded by Councillor McLaughlin. And, you know, we could achieve a first here. There could be a lot of sense spoken and we could reach early agreement. You'd never know. Okay, over to you, Councillor Warrington. I'll pick you out now by your TV screen.
Reckon I could go down in history, Chair?
Yep.
Well, look at obviously the motion is on the system, and basically it's very brief. The COVID pandemic caused a lot of us to make huge changes to how we carry out our day-to-day business. As our council played an important role during this time, it was important that there was good communication with everyone involved, from councillors, officers and other outside bodies. And this was achieved through WebEx and other platforms like Zoom and Teams. I think it's fair to say that people can very easily get into a rut, and the convenience of hybrid meetings can be very attractive. We have now reached a time, almost 2.5 years later, where most councillors would like to return to in-person meetings, while allowing those not comfortable with returning to remain hybrid. This would mean not having to submit a seating plan every month, which would save officers' times, and it's also fair to say that in-person meetings are certainly a lot easier to chair. There could still be a facility outside of the meetings, outside the full member meetings could be still held remotely, thus given some savings and etc. as we moved on. At the end of the day, we're all social animals, and we do like to get together. And although we don't always agree, we usually go out and we don't be tripping each other down the stairs. And even it's proved tonight, the voting system caused problems with some of the members who were on hybrid. So it certainly would be, you know, if they were back in the chamber again, it would certainly be a lot easier as well. So that's the motion as I presented, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And go to Councillor McLaughlin then.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, as Victor says, we are social creatures, and whilst we do have the things we disagree on, there's many things that we can agree on, and those can be discussed in the hallways and corridors of power in Oma and Enniskillen before and after meetings. And it also leaving in there that there is the insurance policy that those that wish to can opt out and use the hybrid method. But it would also save staff. I know it's a major issue having to sort out seating plans and stuff. Whereas if they were just taking out the people who are opting out, it would. I think it would be far easier for staff as well, for especially for our main council meetings and our full council committees. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, John. One indication coming from Councillor Keenan, and then a second indication coming from Councillor Buchanan. So Councillor Keenan. Councillor Keenan's hand has maybe come down. Okay, move now to Councillor Buchanan.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. Our party would be in support of the motion before us this evening. I suppose we're all glad that we've moved to a time when we can go back to in-person meetings. Although it is good to keep the proviso there for anyone who maybe can't attend of the hybrid option. But definitely our party would support that our full council and our main committees are back to full member committees. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor McAleer.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I suppose I'm not alone, and the irony isn't lost on me, and I presume not on others, that a party calling a couple of motions back for remote working across the district, and again a party that had proposed excluding many people from these committee meetings is now looking to get everybody back in and around the table again. I'd just like to know, I suppose, in relation to the ministry that same party holds, what's the current health guidance surrounding working together, working in a communal office or communal setting, that the presumption is here that we move from the 2 metre distancing, because whilst I see councillors before the names, I don't see a doctorship or a PhD or anything next to them. So just if you could clarify that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and I think at this juncture we'll go back to Councillor Warrington for summing up. Oh, yep.
I think the reference made to my party colleagues' earlier motion, the two motions were completely different. So that's all I'm going to say on that. There's nothing really more to be said. Obviously, COVID hasn't went away, but I think we're in a situation where we're going to have to work with it and work around it, which we're all doing and have been doing. I know certainly the distancing was down to 1 metre. I will certainly get an update on that soon, but I think there is no problem with councils going back into full committees again within their chambers. So I would ask you all to support this meeting or motion so that we can all get together again and discuss everything in harmony, as we always do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that's agreed, members, I think, isn't it? Okay. No dissent recorded. That's agreed. Councillor Blake, did you want to come in on a point of order? Right, I'll just... Standing order 16.4.
16.4, yeah, if you'd permit me. I know that you'd given me permission to raise an issue in AOB. I just think as a matter of urgency that it needs to be heard tonight and not with anything, so if that's permitted.
Okay, I think we can invoke that thing about notice to continue the meeting if necessary. I do believe we will get the business finished by 10:30, including any other business. I'll resolve to do that. Okay, thank you. Okay, going to go to correspondence now. Alison, can you lead us through correspondence, please? Item 9.
Okay, Chair, yes, thank you. So first item of correspondence is, sorry, Chair, it's from the, Private Secretary to the Minister for Foreign Affairs. This is in relation to the Council's representations about the establishment of a passport office in Northern Ireland and specifically in the Council District. So for information, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, I'll first off happy enough to note, well, not happy, but I'll note the correspondence. I think it needs to be stated that it's a dismissive and really quite an insulting response, which ultimately doesn't actually answer the question about an Irish passport office in the north that we have posed to the Minister. So I would actually propose that we respond seeking clarity on how this issue is being progressed, and indeed that we contact other councils across the north to request that they too lend their support and ask the Dublin government to give urgent consideration to establishing an Irish passport office here. So I would make that as a proposal, Chair. Thank you.
So you've both proposed a note and you've made a proposal. Go to Councillor Thomas O'Reilly next.
I'm happy to second the noting, but likewise, Chair, absolutely disappointed with the result here from our letter. Once again, we are being dismissed. The question wasn't even answered or even attempted to be answered. It was a dismissal response as you could possibly get. And Chair, it is just one in a long line to local government, and unless as local government we band together, and whether that is through NILGA or what mechanism we use, we are not being taken seriously here. And, you know, to not even address the substantive nature of our letter is just showing contempt for this council. And Chair, I would propose that we do go back to say this in no uncertain terms that, it is a waste of our time and energy, and on behalf of the citizens we represent, to send letters if they're going to be totally ignored and the substantive issue not even addressed. So I would be proposing that we do write back with a strongly worded letter to see if we can actually get a response that addresses what we asked.
And just for efficiency's sake, Thomas, I might ask Councillor McAleer if he would subsume your idea into his proposal, if you didn't mind on this occasion.
Good.
Yep. Okay, next up would be Corlior O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It is an insulting letter from the Office of the Minister for Foreign Affairs. I just would like to highlight, not long ago, we just had a motion passed where we asked this government to establish, a consultative process where, potentially to decide the future of north and south of this island. And here we got a letter we've openly admitted, everyone will admit now, is treating us with contempt. So I don't have much confidence in either of those processes. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and Corlior McCaffrey.
Gurmagat Caherly, just want to come in and obviously it's a disgraceful reply to be getting from the Minister for Foreign Affairs, but I just want to encourage maybe those people who haven't already to sign the petition that has been brought out to demand an Irish passport office in the 6 counties here in the north of Ireland, because this is a question of nationality. We've seen the increase of Irish passports in the census data that's come out, and more every year people are making these applications. We've seen it as elected representatives, the huge demand that there is, and quite frankly it is discrimination that we are not having access to these services and receiving replies like that. So I would agree with the comments from my council colleague there.
Okay, so we've had a proposer and a seconder, Emmett and Thomas. Additional points from Chris and others. Thank you. So that's agreed. Members, no dissent. Agreed. Moving on then, Alison, to the next item of correspondence from DFC.
Yes, Chair. Really, this is just advising the Council of the extension of the provisions to allow the holding of Council remote hybrid meetings. But I suppose it would just draw members' attention to the last paragraph, which advises that the order is subject to the confirmatory procedure in the Assembly, which means that whilst it comes into operation once made, it will cease to have effect 40 days from the date of making, unless it has been approved by a resolution of the Assembly. So while the arrangements are currently in place, in the event of the Assembly not being re-established, I think that will present some difficulties for this to be further embedded.
Okay. Councillor McCaffrey may have left his hand up from the last item, I'm not sure. Okay, thank you. So just need a proposer and seconder to note, Mark Buchanan and Paul Robinson. Thank you, 1 and 2. So moving on then, motion regarding the common travel area and some correspondence around that.
Well, Chair, just in relation to the item of correspondence, board members, I think we might have had, two. Yes, we originally had 2 items of correspondence here. One was erroneously attached, which was around the electric vehicles. That's now another correspondence. But to highlight the correspondence that does relate to the motion on behalf of the Private Secretary from the Minister for Justice, setting out the Department's position, the Minister's views, and together with an apology for the delay in coming back to us.
Okay. So, Councillor McAleer.
Thanks, Chair. Again, I'll not speak too long on this, just mindful of time, but the content and the tone of this letter is something that's quite concerning. I do appreciate that there's the potential for legislative amendments in relation to reducing timeframes, but by and large, I'm quite concerned about the law that has been brought in, and I don't think it's progressive, and I suppose it's all those things that we would like to see in a truly shared and a truly inclusive island. I think there's more to this letter probably than we'll have time to discuss tonight. So there'll be probably issues coming back off of this, but just for the interest of time, I'll propose to note the letter this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And having a seconder for the noting. Thank you, Councillor Rennie. And then moving on then, Minister for Finance regarding cost of living crisis motion.
Yes, Chair, this was just specifically in relation to, and we do have some other letters similar to this in the other correspondence folder as well. Just the Minister for Finance's response regarding the Council's recently adopted motion on the cost of living crisis.
Okay. Have we a proposer to note? Councillor Wilson and a seconder, Councillor Blake. Councillor Crawford was nearly in front of him. Got to be sharp there with young Blake behind you there. Okay. Happy to move on to other correspondence.
Yes, Chair, and just to advise, we have 8 items of correspondence in the other folder, so just a few to work through. The first item, Chair, correspondence received yesterday, 3rd of October, and this was from the Department for the Economy, which advises of their awarding of mineral prospecting licences, and members will be aware this is something the Council objected to. So the details are set out and are effective from the 1st of October 2022 to 2 licences for Carillion, one for Mount Castle Trust and the other for Flint Ridge.
Okay. Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I propose to note, but just in relation to the correspondence, I think it goes without saying that it's both frustrating and disappointing that these mineral prospecting licenses have been granted with apparently no consideration given to the large number of objections to them, as well as this council's opposition to the granting of the same. It seems DFE's idea of consultation is actually meaningless. Furthermore, and I think this needs to be reiterated, Flintridge and Galantis is the same mining company that recently pleaded guilty in court to several health and safety failings at Cabinet Hall. Despite having previously pleaded not guilty, they're going to be sentenced on the 14th of this month. I would like to propose that we actually go back to the department and ask, why is the character and history of these companies not taken into account? Did the delay in the outcome of this case impact on DFE's decision? And should this actually be reconsidered? And I note just in relation to the correspondence underneath the map of mineral prospecting licence areas, there is actually a statement there that any non-observance of stipulated terms and conditions may result in a mineral prospecting licence being revoked by the department. But they've shown that same flippancy with other mining companies who have breached conditions, and they're currently are in breach of planning application with this very council, and yet no action has been taken by the department. So I would like to get just some feedback on the department, how this is monitored, how it's surveyed, and how it's actually enforced, because at the minute, the people on the ground can only see failure coming from this department. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Corleor O'Coffey.
Sorry, Chair, I was having a problem coming in there. Yeah, I'm happy to second that proposal from Councillor McAleer and also second the noting of this correspondence. There's an issue of due diligence here, surely. It has been raised before with the department in regard to accepting applicants for mining and other licenses, that there's, applications have gone in with addresses that are no longer associated with the company, with investment vehicles that have been bought by other corporate interests, let's put it that way. And this has happened repeatedly in the past. And here we're seeing it yet again, as has just been exposed there by Councillor McAleer, an applicant which is now seeking to, bring a toxic industry into our midst, which has already been found elsewhere guilty of infractions. And this is a very serious environmental issue. We need to see, there's absolutely no form of accountability, it appears, over decision making in departments in Stormont, whether there are ministers in place or not, it seems. And yet there's issues of due diligence. Why isn't that being? So I'd ask if Councillor McAleer would include that reference, because there is a legal obligation, I believe, on those in consideration of these matters to conduct their review of who the applicant is and all the matters around them in terms of the legal activities or non-legal activities previously. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so we have a proposer and a seconder. Okay, I presume that Councillor McAleer is incorporating additional aspects
Happy
of
with that,
Councillor
Chair,
Coffey?
yeah.
Okay, and agreed, members. and agreed. Okay, thank you. Next item of correspondence.
Chair, this is really the second of two items, which is linked to a matter arising from the council minutes, but it's a response from the PAC in relation to the council's representations regarding clarification about the applications which are included within the Dalradian public inquiry. So this is the response, and it sets out the details of the 8 applications and those which have been conjoined within it.
Okay, do I need a proposer to note? Proposer to note then, please. Okay, Councillor Thompson, and I'll go to Councillor Crawford as seconding the noting. Thank you. So that's agreed, members. Next item, please.
Yes, Chair. Item 953. This is a response from the Minister for Health in relation to the Council's request for a business case for the closure of Rusley and also a review of the capacity of Maple Healthcare. The Minister sets out around the arrangements for business case and the release, and similarly has advised that Maple have indicated no particular difficulties in terms of their capacity.
Okay, Councillor O'Coffey.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to propose the note. I also want to propose the right back to the minutes. This is frankly shocking response here. You know, there's a number of issues involved. This is a very serious issue. The entire community around the Rusley area has been left without a GP service as a result of the failure, really, to address the a gap in provision. There's private sector failure. There is a responsibility upon the department to actually step up and provide services which are locally accessible. They're simply not locally accessible if it's a good, further than walking distance. What's the mileage between Rusley and Lisnaskea? Isn't it about 12 miles distance? There's only one service, I think, a week to go to Enniskillen. The public transport is of such a chronic quality, and we have no GP service in this community. And then, as a justification, there was no need for a business case because the GP services continue to be provided elsewhere in Maple in Lisnaskea, and everyone knows that the Lisnaskea situation is very difficult. There's large waits to get through and to have an appointment, and even when we've met with the representatives of the Maple Healthcare, have been raising significant concerns around their capacity, directly contrary to the last line of this. And it seems to me that the Department of Health is washing their hands of their responsibility to provide locally accessible GP services to our communities, and especially to those in rural areas. And it is simply not good enough to, just to throw your hands up and claim force majeure that there's nothing we can do about it. Well, clearly there is something to be done about it. What has happened as this council has been involved in has saved services in areas in rural Tyrone, and we need to see similar activities in rural Fermanagh. And I don't see how this is at all justified. So I'd like us to write back and just challenge those issues on those very points. So I'd like to propose that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to come back to this in a second, but I do need a proposer and a seconder to extend the meeting by half an hour in the anticipation we can complete the business. Councillor Wilson and Councillor Warrington. Could have taken you, Anthony, there, but okay. So that's agreed, members. Okay. So now, in terms of this, Erne East councillors obviously are vying to speak. So I'm going to go to Councillor Warrington, and then Councillor Keenan, and then Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Well, we're rehashing what's already been spoken about numerous times. And I would respectfully point out to Councillor O'Coffey, at the time of the Rusley GP situation, I was very involved in it, and I was on the ground, and we looked at every option possible. We spoke to any of the statutory bodies that we thought could help. Obviously, at that time, the Department of Health felt that the Lisnaskea surgery was able to cope with the numbers that they were going to get from Rusley. It's not an ideal situation, I would be the first to say it's not an ideal situation, but there was not a possibility at that time of getting a GP to go to Rosslea. It was looked at, it was exhausted, it was looked at and exhausted again. So we're going over old ground, and if we're going to talk about this at every meeting, yes, there is action needed, but there is no point in sending letters to and fro. The thing has been investigated to the end, and the people are not on the ground. The GPs are not on the ground to provide the service, and obviously Maple felt that they were capable of encompassing the Rosslea surgery. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Keenan.
Yeah, well, contrary to what the previous speaker said, it looks like it has been investigated. The two questions that we asked was there a business case done or requested, and could we have a review? If you look at the letter, it says that the Maple Group practice felt in order to provide a safe, comprehensive service to patients, that'd only be possible to operate from 2 sites, and that basically there's no need for a business case. But surely it wasn't the responsibility of the Maple Group. The responsibility should have lay with the former HSBC, and it looks now, as Donal has quite rightly pointed out, that they're now trying to pass the blame to the Maple Group. So who is responsible for the health and well-being of the people in our community? Is it the private company, or is it, as it's supposed to be, the statutory body, which seems to be trying to pass the buck here? And their last comment there, if we go down to it, the SSPG colleagues recently met with the GP practice to discuss and reflect on the current continual challenges facing GPs. However, Maple Healthcare did not raise any significant issues. I think Donald's highlighted it. It's a massive issue in this area, and I'm sure all councillors from the Erne East area and wider are well aware of that. And I think that the SPPG would need to speak with the people on the ground here, because Maple obviously is not giving them all of the information that of what's happening here. So I think we shouldn't forget about it, as Councillor Warrington says. I think we should need to push forward for this, because the people here are not getting adequate healthcare in Listonskey or Rosslea. I think it was complete failure what happened in 2017. I think it's only going to get worse. And I think, and I will second Donald's proposal to write back. And I think that's a must. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's all very disappointing in around the Listonskey Health Centre, Rosslea GP surgery, and GP practice across the north in general. But I was looking back on our records, and I came across a document in our minutes and headlined Rosslea surgery HSCB statement 7th of April 2017. And one of the paragraphs in it states, in relation to concerns regarding resources, stroke GPs availability in Maple, the HSCB can confirm that Maple have been able to recruit additional GPs. Maple and other group practices have been able to recruit GPs, as young GPs tend to prefer working in large group practices. Well, that didn't work out too well. That statement, I think we had 8. It's down to 4 now. Another paragraph in it states, a business case for the new health centre in Listonskey is currently being finalised. And while there is no definitive completion date in place, the HSCB will work with the Western Trust and the Department of Health to ensure that it is progressed as quickly as possible. Now, I wrote to the Minister there a month or so ago, and I got a reply back, and I specifically asked for a on-the-ground start date when work will be actually starting, and the mentioned January 2024. So April 2017 to January 2024, we can do the maths. If that's as quickly as possible, God help us all. And then it also states the closure of Rochlea is not based on any financial consideration. The HSCB will be putting additional investment in place. Well, I wonder where that additional investment ever went, because I never saw it. The GP service went downhill week on week. It's absolutely scandalous at the minute. Patients can't get an appointment. People are complaining all the time. I'm sure every other Air East councillor the same as myself.
Okay, final point, Seamus.
It's an absolute farce. But anyway, it's just interesting if anyone wants to take a look at that document and all the failed promises that was made in it. It's quite relevant to this discussion.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Chair. And we're all acknowledging that there is a scarcity of GPs. There's no doubt about that. But that wasn't something that snuck up on us. That was a very real possibility for many years. And the investment wasn't put in there to train the GPs and to be able to have enough GPs on the ground. Maple Practice taken over that many new patients had put a lot of stress on the doctors that were there in the practice, and as other councillors have stated, though some of those other doctors left the practice. We are struggling big time to be able to, and we are not meeting the expectations of many patients in the Air East area with the service that we have. And certainly, once again, we see an elongating of the start date for the new surgery to be based in Lisnaskea at the old high school site. And it's not acceptable, Chair, that we have people who are in a really rural area being disenfranchised, being treated as second-class citizens by not having an adequate investment in their healthcare services. And I would like to commend the doctors in the GP service in Maple Health and the rest of the staff that are trying their very best to be able to cope with the extra amount of patients looking for appointments with no further investment. And Chair, we need to see investment until that new health centre is on the ground and functioning. And we want to be sure that the investment is there to train the GPs and that the GPs are then able to come and work in a state-of-the-art centre. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Now, given standing orders, the time restrictions, the fact that more than one speaker who has already contributed wants back in, I can't allow that. But we have agreed actions in this discussion. Alison, could you remind us of those actions?
Chair, well, the correspondence has been noted, but also that it's proposed that we would write back to the department, continuing to restate the council's concerns, raise the questions that again have previously not been addressed, and specifically the commitments that have been made and not followed through by the department.
Okay, thank you. And that's agreed, members. Now, can I ask for general consensus that we're going to try and approach the final 20 minutes of the meeting without necessarily using your 3 minutes entitlement to try to get through the business? I do have a couple of important any other business items I would love to reach as well, but keep taking us through the correspondence now, Alison, please.
Item 954, Chair, a response from DFI about Moyler Road are additional representations, and again, they're saying they've liaised, or DFI is indicating they've liaised with PSNI, advised no collisions, no issues at the area, and DFI won't be intervening.
Okay, two councillors, Councillor Campbell and then Councillor Rennie.
Find a way to use that as fuel and there's energy, so when you get on the
Councillor Green's might be live. Okay, but over to you, Councillor Campbell.
Well, I suppose it's disappointing that this Shields Corner, Moyler Road, Seskinore isn't going to be addressed. There's talk about upgrading the signage at the junction and warning signs. However, you know, we really wanted to see more done. Clearly, it's disappointing the DFI roads really are waiting for someone to get seriously injured. That's what you could imply from the writing, from the letter. And it does seem to be the case that we need serious injuries, that we need, or worse, at many of our black spots along these similar junctions. So it is disappointing. There is a suggestion in the letter. It may be useful to contact OpenReach and ask them to consider relocating the pole positioned on the bend to remove a further hazard. I would propose that we do that,
Okay,
Chair,
thank
given
you.
that that's suggested. However, I don't feel that goes near enough, unfortunately.
Okay, thank
But
you.
thank you.
Councillor Rennie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'm conscious of the time. And this response here is totally contrary to the reality at Shields Corner. And at the initial, when I reported this first, you yourself seconded my proposal then. I am going to ask here, Chair, that we ask DUI Road Service for a site meeting at this location to iron out some form of a solution that will be meaningful. Look, we have had the chevrons there. This has gone on for 30 years. This is not a new Dido. Yeah, maybe the vehicles are more high powered and all now, and it's more difficult to get them round the corner. But this has gone on for so long that we need a solution to it. And the chevrons have long gone. The non-slip road surface has long gone, and the skid barrier has long gone. All these things, and I have sympathy for Mr. Healy here. Daniel, you're a new boy on the block, and this has been going on for so long. I propose, Chair, and I would ask my comrade here, Councillor Campbell, if he would be agreeable that we would ask for a site meeting here and involve Mr. Shields in it. Mr. Shields can't sleep in his bed. I don't know where these people have been and that they don't know about what's going on. I have it photographed on my phone, Chair, to support all of this here. So I would make that a proposal, Chair.
And neither councillor is exaggerating. It's a very, very serious issue. Okay, but I think we've got agreement on that. Okay, thank you, members.
Chair, the next item is from the Taoiseach's Department just in relation to the shared island unit and specifically the rollout of the electric vehicles. We had asked, or so the charging infrastructure, and we'd asked for some further clarification. So this, in summary, we've been advised that work is still ongoing and we will in due course hear about the details.
Councillor Riley.
Chair, just to say that any addition is always very welcome, but when you see 90 across the island, it is minimal. And I suppose the other one that I'd like to get, if we can, an ongoing update on is the amount in our area that are currently working on a monthly basis, that we can be assured that there is some maintenance going on with these. Last time we looked at this, there was a problem with getting spare parts. So I'd be interested to see how we have progressed over the summer. Thank you.
Okay. We have a significant number of other correspondence here, haven't we, Alison? Another 4. Do you want to take them in a composite way and we'll get a proposer to note or whatever? Okay. Councillor Coffey.
Yeah, Chair, this correspondence is quite concerning, really. The idea that a major contribution to to improve access to EV charge points amounts to 90 across the entirety of the island, north and south, is genuinely shocking, considering we're moving to a situation by the end of this decade when it will be illegal to actually sell most types of cars that people drive already. And the idea that we're going to have 90 EV points as a major initiative, it's nowhere near the scale that we require. And I would just like to propose that we would write back and question the Office of the Taoiseach in terms of how they envisage 90 rapid EV charging points to be sufficient to meet the demand that we need to face up to. And I'm sure if we do a pro rata or a per capita analysis here, 90 rapid EV charging points possibly amounts to as few as maybe 2, if maybe not even 2 in our council area, maybe 3. So this looks to be another example of minimalist kind of ticking boxes instead of what's needed, which is a very significant investment in publicly owned renewables generating and distributional facilities, which will enable us to make a genuine transition away from fossil fuels if we are serious about it. So I'd like to propose that. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair, but I was going to go on to the last 3 items of correspondence in the other
Okay.
folder.
Well, in relation to Councillor Coffey, we had a proposal that's seconded by Councillor Feely, and that's agreed, members. Now, remember, there's 13 minutes left. Matters arising, items of any other business, please cooperate. Thank you. Over to you, Alfred.
Chair. Sorry, Chair.
Okay.
What I was going to say there, I was going to go on to the last 3 pieces of correspondence in the other folder.
Okay.
I was going to formally propose that they are noted.
Okay. Okay, we can do that. Thank you. Councillor Garrity.
Yes, Chair, and in the interest of speed, I would second Earl Councillor Thompson's proposal there. The main reason, and I know he tried to get in earlier, and I don't get too excited, as you know, Chair, but I believe that Councillor Paul Blake has a very, very, very serious AOB that really impacts this district, if indeed what he's telling me is correct, and I'm concerned about it. So when I'm concerned about it, it's something that maybe is of interest. So I don't know if that can be reached. I know he did quote a point of order, but it is one that's in relation to the hospital, the South Essex Hospital and Enniskillen, and it's very serious. So I would urge if that could be got to that point, because I think it's a real
Thank you.
concern.
You've seconded Earl's proposal. Thank you for that. And that's agreed, is it? Emmett, are you in next?
Thank you, Chair. No, sorry, just there's actually a couple of items of correspondence in there. First off, the response from the DFC Minister, and I'll try and skip over this as quickly as I can.
See,
but
we're not going to, we've just been alerted that there's a very, very serious issue that needs to be brought up.
Chair, with respect,
We're going to miss it.
there are serious issues in the correspondence.
Okay, sorry, I've had a proposal and a seconder, and it has been agreed, so I have to move on to the next.
Chair, it hasn't. I'm dissenting from it. It hasn't been agreed.
I'd object to that proposal.
I'd appreciate
call a vote.
Okay, well, I'm going to go to a vote on whether or not we shall move on, having been proposed by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Garrity.
Can I speak to that vote, Chair? Can I speak on the vote why we need to consider these further? Because this is the cost of living crisis that people are actually suffering at the moment. People are suffering, and we're not going to discover the cost of living is going to be pushed off the order book.
Standing orders determines that this meeting at maximum shall last 3.5 hours. We're at 3 hours 20 minutes, and we're trying to get through the business. And you do know there's a major cost of living focus by this council on Monday the 17th and all the items are being scoped out for that meeting. Those documents are being used as part of the scoping out for that meeting, where everybody will have a major opportunity. So,
Chair, could I make a suggestion?
Presumably, then we have to set up an IT vote in this matter, whether or not to move on, which I'm trying to do.
Chair, could I make a proposal that you might be agreeable to, and it might solve the problem that we're facing? That we don't take a vote.
I have ruled on the matter, not trying to be awkward.
Present.
I'm simply trying to manage a meeting, and I have 8 minutes left. Okay, so we can set up this vote. It'll take another minute or two.
Chair, we could revisit the matters and bring forward whatever AOB needs to be dealt with at this point, and then revisit the letters.
I can't do that because I have to go through matters arising, and I have to go through any other business in that order. That's the way it is. The votes are open now, please. To move on or not to move on. So people are going to vote on this, as the proposal is to move on. We're voting here. You've got the result, Alison?
Okay, Chair, so you have 25 votes for and 2 votes against, so the
Okay.
proposal is carried.
Thank you. So I'm now at the matters arising section of the meeting, and that's 13 pages, sorry, 11. I'm going to go through each page individually. Page 1. Can everybody take down their hands, please, just to make it middling easy to assess what's going on here? Thank you. If everybody can take down their hands. Okay, thanks for that. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. Okay, Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. And this is, I suppose, this is an item that I'm going to use some time on because it's important to my own area. But in relation to the strategic review of the mining industry, it's worth noticing or noting in the last week there have been a number of stories around budgetary pressures within the PSNI. There was a story on the BBC website, the PSNI freeze recruitment amid cash shortage, noting that the police is to freeze officer recruitment due to sustained budgetary pressures. Another entitled Action Needed to Avert a Full-Blown PSNI Crisis Following Recruitment Freeze, and that was from the Police Federation, noting that an appeal has been made to politicians to sort out the police budget to avert a full-blown crisis, with the PSNI Chief Operating Officer Pamela McCready quoted as saying that regrettably we anticipate our budgetary position will have an impact on our service delivery to the communities we serve. We continue to assess how best to maximise our resources against operational risks and priorities. And just in relation to, I suppose, ongoing discussion on this particular topic, this is item 6.2. It's very interesting to note a comment from the Ulster Unionist Mike Nesbitt on a response given by the Department of Justice when he noted it's simply not good enough for the Justice Minister to call it an operational matter and to seek to pass the buck. This is about service delivery affecting the entire community and the ability of the police to do their job, and it needs to be resolved as a matter of urgency. So he should really be calling on his party colleagues locally to bear that in mind when this discussion comes back, as it will do in the future. So I'd just be mindful of those points. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Coffey.
Sorry, Chair, I was just cut off there. Yeah, I just want to reiterate those points. We have a decision here in relation to expenditure of large sums of money at the very time when we're being told that the funding is not even there to employ police who have actually been recruited. And this is genuinely concerning insofar as these officers will be effectively used in a community policing role. And, we've had a discussion earlier on about confidence in the police. Well, essential to that must be community policing as a way in which people can have such confidence. And if we are involved in a situation where money has been going to subvent effectively a multi-billion-pound profit-making industry as opposed to invested in frontline policing services, then I think we're in a real bad situation. But I'm just happy to second what Councillor McAleer had said there.
Okay, and that's agreed, members. And thank you for your cooperation. Page 5, page 6.
Chair, I'll maybe just summarise very briefly, just to advise we have the correspondence from the utility regulator welcoming the meeting with the council and the involvement of the Consumer Council. So just a proposer and seconder to note. And as
Earl Thompson and Mark Buchanan.
And just as you noted, Chair, the special council meeting on the cost of living crisis will be held on Monday, the keep getting the date for the strong 17th of October at 7 p.m.
Okay, thanks very much for that. So page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10. Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, just before maybe Councillor McAleer, if I could just advise members, just for noting, we've correspondence from a couple of the schools in relation to our representations on school uniform, just on page 7. And on page 8, we have the DFI letter, which Councillor McAleer might be referencing, but just a noting of the school correspondence, please.
Okay, Councillor Thompson, and seconded by, to note, Councillor Wilson. Thank you. I have to go now to Councillor McAleer.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, happy to support the comments from both principals. I think they're very good and very strong responses. But as the Chief Executive rightly points out, page 8, 7.1 is what I'm coming on. There are a number of correspondence relating to this. The DFA correspondence, which is really very disappointing, that's at item 4.3. After Minister O'Dowd had indicated that there would be help available, and as noted at the time, the public inquiry is a totally unfair contest, the David and Goliath scenario. Dalridian with 40 plus paid consultants dancing to their tune versus the local community. So I would propose that we actually seek clarification from the Minister or the Department by return correspondence on the sentence, nothing arising from the holding of a public inquiry or the process more broadly prevents the local community from seeking a right to legal representation and to access expert advice. How does our local community seek this right, and who do they seek it from? Also, I would propose that there's a line in there, the council can, if minded, and as the locally elected authority, explore the option of appointing consultants to represent the council or community concerns at the inquiry, that the council does so in conjunction with neighbouring councils to spread any expense over that. This is something we must be committed to ahead of any public inquiry to protect the health and well-being of our residents and to protect the biodiversity and environment of our local district and the future of our children. And finally, Chair, I would actually make a proposal that the DFI Minister presses the pause button on the public inquiry until such times as we can prove, or such times as can be proved, that the public will have equal access to the right of appeals that the developers have. And this is an issue under planning. And I know NGOs and various organisations have made the same point, that there are very real...
Chief Executive wants to comment on one aspect of what you're saying.
Chair, it's just very specifically on the council representation to advise the council already has a position whereby we will report back to you on what scope is available in terms of our own representation and if that can be expanded upon. So I think that's already covered, Councillor, although I appreciate it's referenced in this letter. I do think there are implicit contradictions in what's being proposed in the department's letter, but we can advise that separately when we're clear on what the scope of our own representation might be.
Councillor Warrington.
Yeah, well, obviously...
Sorry, Chair, can I finish my point, please? Just very...
Okay, you're still within your 3 minutes. We'll give you another 20 seconds, I think it is here.
So just the request really at present is that the Minister or the Department intervene immediately at this stage to enable measures to be introduced that are guaranteed to ensure that representations at the public inquiry can be made in a manner that is fair, equitable, transparent and commands the trust of the community in line with the Aarhus Convention and commitments of the Department. Thank you, Chair.
And Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair.
Point of order.
Okay.
Apologies, Chair.
Just the voice recognition. So that's Councillor Gannon. Point of
Yes,
order.
apologies. Just proposing that we move to the next item. Every councillor will want to hear what Councillor Blake is bringing up here. It's vitally important. So I'm just proposing we move to the next item. Thank you, Chair.
I second Emma's proposal, and we can move on if that was.
But I have to finish matters rising. And people can cooperate with me, of course. Okay, so Councillor Warrington, yourself included, please.
Yeah, well, the Minister, obviously, for Infrastructure made it clear that the legislation underpinning the public inquiry means that it's not possible for public funding to be given to community groups. I think it's unsurprising. It is an unsurprising result or response from the PSC.
Who wrote that speech?
Okay, carry on, Councillor Warrington.
I think it's an unsurprising response from the PSC that they are an independent body, and even the suggestion that they could provide funding for third parties for an inquiry completely undermines their independence in assessing the application. The point raised by the Minister regarding community places is an interesting one. Community groups, including those in favour of the proposed mine, such as the silent majority who presented to this council, and those against the mine.
You mean Dalridian?
Okay, sorry. In the interests of...
I'm sorry, this is just not acceptable, Chair. This happens all the time. When anybody speaks that Councillor McAleer doesn't agree with them, he interrupts them rudely.
I would ask Councillor McAleer to afford other people the opportunity to speak and not to interrupt. Please, Councillor Warrington, finish your point.
The Council has previously discussed at length appointing consultants to represent the Council at a public inquiry, and the decisions were made not to appoint the external consultants. I would still be against the spend of ratepayers' money, especially in the middle of a cost of living crisis, on external consultants. We must be fiscally responsible in this Council. Council's environmental health, as referenced by the Minister, has already assessed the proposal, and there is no need to do so again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Now we have a proposer and a seconder. We have an item proposed and seconded. Can we agree with that? And then we need to move on. Okay. Agreed, members? Now, what we're going to do now is, Alison, just assist.
Chair, you're proposing if we could just take a collective proposal for the remaining correspondence associated with matters arising, and then Chair will move to any other business.
Okay,
just for
Councillor
noting.
Wilson has proposed that and Councillor Bell has seconded it. Okay. And that's that. And we're going to go now to any urgent and relevant business. I'm going to go to Councillor Blake. I'll get you switched on here, Paul.
Geez, that was exasperating trying to get through that at the end of it to actually try and raise this. Actually disappointed in so many of the councillors when you hear the urgency of this issue that so many councillors tried to prevent it being raised this evening. It is serious, especially from some councillors who would purport to be very supportive of this. So what I'm going to raise tonight is extremely alarming, and that's why I want to raise it with the utmost urgency, that it was recently brought to my attention and that the Health Minister is due to come down to this district at the end of the month to announce the withdrawal of services, of emergency surgical services from the Southwest Acute Hospital in Enniskillen. And I think that we need to write to the Minister as a matter of urgency and say that, is he aware of this? Is he aware of the potential impacts that could have on other services, particularly obstetrics and A&E? Is there a plan to retain emergency either for C-sections or postpartum hemorrhages? And also asking, like, is he aware that for a long time now we've been receiving reassurances from the Chief Executive of the Western Trust, Neil Guckian, that there are no plans to cut surgical services from the SWA? And is this now about to go back on that? And I think it's something that needs to be sent immediately, that we get some kind of clarity on this matter at the utmost attention. And just asking as well is, what is his long-term prospects for the enhancement and improvement of services in SWA? Is it going to be an elective centre? All these are questions that need to be answered. It is a matter of the utmost urgency for people who live in this district to know what's going on.
Thank you. And I'm going to go to Councillor Coyle. I would like to just take a seconder because I don't have time for further discussion, and then I presume we're going to agree in this matter. But thanks for the detail, Councillor Blake. Have I got a seconder in yourself, Councillor Coyle? Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I do. I second that 100% because that is what's apparently going on.
Okay, thank you. And agreed, members? Okay, agreed. And now the meeting has reached a conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good night all.